From level 1 to 100 philosophical dilemmas that collapse reality to fall asleep too. What if turning off the lights didn't just end your day, but dissolved your entire reality? Somewhere between the hum of your thoughts and the silence of the stars, a question floats. What level of truth can your mind handle before it breaks the rules of the world you live in? Tonight, you won't be solving dilemmas. You'll be drifting through them. From the simple puzzle of what is real to the unraveling paradox of, can the universe ask a question? Each level in this journey isn't meant to be won. It's meant to be felt. And as you fall deeper, through logic traps, quantum riddles, and mirrors that reflect nothing but your own wondering, you might realize these dilemmas were never meant for daylight. They're lullabies for the soul, soft doors into the infinite. So close your eyes now, let your breath slow, and step gently into the collapse of everything you thought you knew. The door that opens backward. There's a door at the edge of thought you didn't notice until just now. It doesn't open with a handle. It opens inward, no, backward, as if it wasn't built to be entered, but to be stumbled into by accident. Like truth, it only appears when you're not looking for it. You've had this moment before, haven't you? The train's just left the station. Someone looks at you and asks, "Did you hear that silence just now?" You didn't. But suddenly, you realize, yes, something slipped away when no one was watching. We often chase certainty like it's a light in the dark, but the moment we try to hold it in our hands, it flickers, then vanishes. It's like a firefly, real only in motion, gone when grasped. Why do we hunger for conclusions when it's the questions that keep us alive? Philosophy, at its root, isn't about collecting answers. It's more like learning to walk backwards in a room with no mirrors. Each step unlearns something. Each breath peels back a layer you didn't realize you were wearing. Someone once sat across from me and whispered, "Maybe the world isn't broken. Maybe it's just folded." And I couldn't reply. I just sat there, aware of a stillness that hadn't existed the moment before. What if reality isn't something we enter, but something that enters us, like breath or grief or music through a wall at night? And what if the door we're trying to find was never locked, only quiet? There's this moment that keeps replaying in my head. A woman in line at the post office looks back and says, "Would you mind if I go ahead? I left the car running." It wasn't about the car. It was about how fragile all our justifications are, how we build logic like scaffolding just to reach a truth that was always sitting on the ground. The truth, as it turns out, is shy. It doesn't approach noise, but in stillness, it rests beside you like a shadow. You don't need to ask it to explain itself. You only need to make room. And so we begin. Here, where your feet can't quite feel the floor, where your eyes begin to blur not from exhaustion, but from the quiet unraveling of what you once thought was solid. You're safe here. You can drift without needing to define the current. You can rest in the question, why do we only see clearly when we stop looking so hard? Someone held the door open for me earlier today. He didn't speak, just nodded, smiled as if to say, "You're not late. You're just arriving from a different question. So let's take that step backward together, not to escape, but to enter what has always been waiting. A room made of doubt, lit by quiet wonder. Let sleep come when it will. Let thoughts fall where they may. This door, this beautifully inconvenient door, has opened just for you, and you didn't need to knock." The mirror with no reflection. It starts with something barely there, a hush in your thoughts, a whisper at the edge of your breath. Have you ever caught yourself being you when no one else is around? Not scrolling, not speaking, just being. Some nights, the silence carries that question in like mist. It doesn't knock, it drifts. A presence you didn't invite, yet don't quite mind. You shift inward, slowly, like turning a doorknob that's been untouched for years. Inside, there's a mirror. But this one doesn't return your image. No face, no outline. Just the feeling of being seen without being shown. Strange, right? You stare, and yet it stares first. Is that really you? Without the smiling face in group photos, or the confident tone on work calls? Or are those just outfits your mind wears depending on who's in the room? Have you ever walked past a shop window and seen yourself by accident? Not the curated you, just a glimpse? And thought, is that who I am when I'm not trying? It's quiet thoughts like these that only visit in stillness. When the emails are closed, the doors locked, and the lights low. Maybe tonight is one of those nights. Imagine this. You're walking through a nearly empty cafe. Someone, stranger, no context, holds the door open for you. No words, just a nod. In that pause, you feel more like yourself than you did all week. How odd, right? That a person you'll never speak to again reminds you that you exist, without performance, without needing to impress. It makes you wonder, how much of you is real, and how much was shaped by the eyes that watched you grow? You stretch beneath the blanket. That soft, sleepy ache behind your eyes is setting in now. A yawn rises, not from tiredness alone, but from the weight of reflection. The self isn't made of granite. It's more like tide water, shifting with the moonlight of who's nearby. Try to name it, and it wriggles free. Try to hold it still, and it quietly escapes, like sand slipping through dream fingers. And maybe that's okay. Maybe identity was never meant to be fixed. Maybe it's a song you hum to yourself to remember who you are, even when no one else can hear it. You blink slowly. The room dissolves into shadow. A flicker of memory returns. Someone once asked if you believed in soulmates. You smiled, unsure why. Maybe because it felt like someone was asking something real, finally. Not, what's your job? Or, where are you from? But, do you believe your soul knows another? That kind of question doesn't need a mirror. Now, all the mirrors fade, and what's left isn't your image, it's your awareness, your warmth, your breath, and somewhere inside, a quiet voice, not a narrator, not even you exactly, but something that remembers who you are, even without reflection. Rest there. This journey is just beginning. Let's go deeper. The infinite library paradox. Somewhere, in the silent dream space just before sleep, a whisper of a thought drifts in like a breeze between shelves. What if every book that could ever be written already exists? Not printed, not bound, just there. Every combination of letters, every confession never shared, every lie no one dared to tell, every answer to a question you haven't even thought to ask. All of it, waiting. There's a place for that thought. It lives inside the infinite library. A man once dreamed it. Borges gave it a name, the Library of Babel. He described its endless hexagonal rooms, each filled with books containing every possible arrangement of letters. The perfect recipe, the blueprint for a world without war. Your future journal filled out before you even lived it. All there, all jumbled. You pick up one book. The cover is blank. The words inside say nothing at all, just scrambled nonsense. You pick up another. It tells you your childhood nickname. one more, and it ends with your last breath. The mind begins to spiral, softly, like smoke rising from a candle just blown out. If truth is somewhere in there, buried beneath infinite gibberish, does it still matter? Your thoughts, for a moment, feel like footsteps on creaky wooden floors. One step asks, how can anything have meaning when everything is already written? Another wonders, does discovery matter if nothing is ever truly new? And just then, without forcing an answer, you hear a voice behind you. Familiar, kind. They say, you've been walking these shelves a while. Find anything good? You smile faintly, even in the dark. Not yet, but I think I'm getting closer. They nod, handing you a book. No title, just warm pages that feel like skin that's been touched by sunlight. You open to the middle, and it's blank, but somehow it makes sense. It's in that blankness where we rest, in that space between words, between certainty and nonsense, where the mind releases its grip on needing to know. You feel yourself floating now, not flying but drifting, like a feather that's finally let go of the air that once held it up. The infinite library is behind you, or maybe still ahead. Either way, it doesn't chase, it waits, and that's the quiet gift of it all. Some truths don't demand to be found, they just are. So you walk a little slower, breathe a little deeper, and allow meaning to flicker softly in and out of view, like candlelight on the other side of old glass. You don't need the answer tonight. You just need the quiet. And if you drift off before the next shelf appears, that's okay. You can always return. The library is infinite, and it remembers. The loop that creates itself. It starts not with a bang, but a gentle return, like stepping into a room you don't remember entering, and somehow everything already knows your name. A thought forms slowly, like mist on glass, but before you can claim it, it asks something back. You think you're doing the thinking, but are you? Self-reference is a strange kind of magic, not the flashy kind, the quiet, dissolving kind. You think of yourself thinking, and then you pause. Who exactly is doing the thinking about the thinking? You wait for an answer, but the voice that answers sounds suspiciously like the one that asked. And now, you're not sure who started the conversation. You ever stand still in a hallway and wonder if you've forgotten something important? Not in the past, but something you haven't thought of yet? That tension, that hush before meaning arrives. That's the loop. It doesn't knock. It just appears and asks you to follow it, softly, slowly, until the walls of certainty begin to blur. I once overheard someone say at a bus stop, "I feel like my thoughts are watching me, not the other way around." They laughed. But it wasn't a joke, not really. There's something eerily intimate about realizing you're not alone in your own head. That part of you might be staging a play where you're the actor and the audience, and maybe the scriptwriter too. The loop isn't dangerous. It won't hurt you, but it's slippery. Try to grab it, and it vanishes into the next idea, like a ribbon folding in your palm. It doesn't move forward, and it doesn't rewind. It just turns, quietly, infinitely. Tonight, as you lie in this slow-breathing dark, maybe there's a small question turning in you. Not urgent, not loud, just warm and repeating, like a child whispering a secret to themselves over and over. Not for an answer, but because it soothes something underneath. You don't need to fix it. The mind doesn't need to be solved like a puzzle. It only wants to be heard without interruption, like letting a record spin long after the song has ended, because the soft crackle becomes its own music. Maybe, just maybe, you're not here to resolve the loop. You're here to drift with it, to float in its rhythm like a feather carried by the breath of a question never meant to be answered. And that's okay. You're allowed to sleep before the loop ends. You're allowed to rest while your mind walks quietly in circles. And if a thought knocks again before you drift off, smile. Let it sit beside you in silence. The loop is still turning, and so are you. Number 5. The silence between words. A word is not just a sound, it's a threshold. But between those thresholds, between the syllables we so often race to speak, there lives something older than language. Silence. Not the kind of silence that screams in awkwardness or hangs heavy in a tense room. No, this one is different. It's the quiet hum that lingers when someone looks at you and doesn't have to say anything, because everything's already understood. It's the stillness after a confession, the breath between "I'm sorry" and "it's okay." A young man once sat on a subway bench, earbuds in, but no music playing, just watching people pass. He told his friend later, "The silence said more than my playlist ever did." His friend laughed, but not because it was funny, because it was familiar. Haven't we all felt that? When the pause in a song hits harder than the drum beat? Silence is not a void. It is not the absence of meaning. It's a presence that holds things too delicate for words. In music, the rest is not a mistake. It's part of the rhythm, a space that lets your heart breathe between crescendos. In life, too, pauses matter. When you stop filling every moment with something, scrolling, speaking, explaining, you begin to sense the space between. And sometimes the space is the message, a missed call, a text left unread, a moment of eye contact when no one blinks. What are these if not unspoken paragraphs? And yet, the modern world despises silence. Noise means productivity. Silence feels like slowness, but the mind craves that stillness, like a pond that settles only when no stone is thrown. A woman told me once, "I started leaving gaps in my conversations on purpose. People told me I became a better listener, but really, I just stopped being afraid of silence." That stayed with me, because maybe silence isn't about withholding, but about allowing. Allowing thoughts to land, emotions to surface, truths to speak for themselves. What if silence is where clarity finally has the courage to show up? In philosophy, there is a space between the question and the answer. That's where your real self lives. The part that notices the hesitation before saying yes, the pause before a lie, the silence after hearing something you didn't want to hear. We often think of these as gaps, but gaps can be bridges between what we know and what we're about to learn. Close your eyes for a moment. Let the silence stretch, not like an absence, but like a gentle room that's just wide enough for you to rest in, a place where your thoughts stop echoing because there's nothing pushing them forward. In this quiet, a new question emerges, not from noise, not from urgency, but from something calmer, something slower. Let the silence say it for you. Whatever comes next, let it form not as an answer, but as an opening. The world will resume soon, but for now stay here, in this soft, breathing silence, until the next thought gently arrives. Not rushed, not expected, just welcome. The stranger in the mind. Have you ever sat still in the quiet between two thoughts, and suddenly, something unfamiliar passed through you? A sentence you didn't finish thinking? A memory you don't recall making? A desire that feels like someone else's? Not frightening, not loud, just strange, like a soft breeze brushing through a room you were certain had no windows. You pause, maybe even smile. Where did that come from? And the room goes still again. Some ideas come uninvited. They slip under the door of our awareness, wearing shoes we've never seen before. You don't recognize the voice, but you're sure it's spoken here before. Carl Jung once called this the shadow, the guest in the back room of the psyche. Not a villain, not a ghost, just the part of you that doesn't introduce itself at dinner. It watches, it remembers differently, and sometimes it thinks before you do. The shadow isn't necessarily dark, but it is hidden. It knows your disappointments better than your diary. It's the one who flinched when someone said, "You're just like your father," even if you smiled on the outside. The one who still rewrites the endings of past conversations late at night, and you wonder, what part of me wants to send that text? What part of me didn't? Who decides when I laugh or when I lie? You see, this is where the mirror warps. When you look inside, do you know who's looking back? Or is it all a shared mask passed from version to version of yourself? Have you ever had a dream where you were both the actor and the observer? Both the one speaking and the one trying to understand what was just said? There's something soft and haunted in that feeling, a double exposure of the mind, where the self is not one solid shape, but a shifting fog of moments, moods, and masks. Someone once asked me, "Do you think we create our thoughts or receive them?" And I replied, "Depends who's asking." Because sometimes a stranger answers before you can. Maybe that's what makes us human, not our thoughts, but the mysterious theater where they perform, a curtain drawn half open, revealing just enough to feel familiar, but never the whole set. You might even say we're walking through a house where most of the rooms belong to someone else. So what do you do when a thought arrives that doesn't feel like yours? Do you chase it away or pour it tea? Let's not run from the whisper tonight. Let's sit beside it, just for a while. Not to solve it, not to decode it, but to feel it breathing gently, like fog on a mirror. And if, as you listen, sleep begins to stretch across your shoulders, like a friend placing a blanket over you mid-sentence, that's okay. You can drift now. You don't need to know who you are tonight. You don't need to hold the thought. Just rest in the knowing that even if there is a stranger in your mind, they are quiet now. And maybe, just maybe, they've been watching over you all along. Let's follow that whisper, not to chase it, but to sit beside it. The illusion of time's arrow. They say time moves forward, like a river flowing downstream, never back, never pausing. But tonight, what if that river is only a reflection in a mirror, one that shimmers when you blink? Breathe in slowly. Let your body loosen like threads unraveling from a spool. In this space, nothing rushes, nothing presses. There is no ticking, no urgency, only the gentle thought. What if time doesn't move forward at all? A soft voice once said, "It's not that we live in time, it's that we are made of it." But what if that's just a story your mind repeats, like a song hummed out of habit? Maybe time is a quilt of moments, stitched without direction, where yesterday and tomorrow sit side by side like quiet neighbors who never speak. Entropy, yes, that quiet law, tries to convince us that the world naturally becomes more chaotic, that eggs don't unscramble, that sandcastles collapse but never rise from dust. But the world of atoms plays a different game. Deep inside the quantum realm, time isn't bound to a direction. Equations don't care if time walks forward or turns back around. A friend once asked, "If I woke up tomorrow remembering things that haven't happened yet, would anyone believe me?" You smiled. Not because it was absurd, but because it felt possible. That thought still lingers. If memory and imagination traded places, if your mind replayed tomorrow like a film you've already seen, would your choices change? You walk into a cafe. Someone looks up and says, "Funny, I dreamed you'd be here today." And somehow, you don't laugh, you just nod. Because deep down, you've felt this before, a moment repeating without ever occurring. Could it be that time is not a line, but a loop? Or a breath held between two sighs? The way you reach for your toothbrush at night, the way your hand knows the switch on the wall. That rhythm, it isn't taught, it's remembered. But from where? Perhaps time is not the arrow. Perhaps it's the bow, pulling back endlessly, storing tension, waiting for the story to release. Someone once said at a bus stop, "We only feel time because we can't feel everything at once." You didn't reply, but that sentence, it still echoes in your chest. Close your eyes now. The past is folding into itself like waves tucking beneath the ocean's skin. The future hums softly in the breath you're taking right now. And here, in this stillness, you're not moving forward. You're floating, not lost, just free from the story of direction. Stay here as long as you need to. Sleep may come like a gentle tide, or not at all. Either is fine, because in this space, time is no longer something you chase, it's something you release. And when you wake, you might not know if it's morning, yesterday, or a moment that hasn't happened yet. That's okay. You were never late. You just arrived differently. The observer trap. You're lying there, eyes closed, or maybe just heavy. Somewhere between this breath and the next, a thought drifts in like fog rolling over a quiet harbor. If no one looks at the moon tonight, does it still glow? Not a riddle, not even a puzzle, just a soft little leaf dropped onto the surface of the mind. Out there, in the world of equations and strange particles, scientists once found that something changes just by being watched, that atoms don't behave the same unless someone is looking, that reality, yes, reality, might only collapse into place when observed. But that's not the part that unsettles. The deeper question is softer, slipperier. If everything needs a witness to be, then who watches the one who watches? At a crosswalk one evening, a man in a faded jacket turned to the person beside him and said, "You ever get the feeling you're being seen through? Like the world isn't looking at you, but through you?" The other person smiled faintly, and without blinking replied, "Only every time I feel most awake." We're used to thinking of consciousness as a light we hold, a beam we point outward. But what if it's more like a gentle echo? Not the source, but the returning sound. Picture this, not as instruction, just a breeze of suggestion. Maybe you're not behind your thoughts. Maybe you're beneath them, like the floor beneath the dancer, not the dance itself. Maybe awareness isn't something you do, but something you are, like the space between stars, the silence between piano notes, the stillness under ripples. When you try to grip that idea, it vanishes. And maybe that's the point. The more you chase it, the more it slips away, like trying to hold a reflection in your hands. A woman once sat beside a pond at dusk, not reading, not thinking, just there. When someone asked what she was doing, she whispered, "I'm letting the world watch itself through me." So tonight, don't try to understand. Just rest in the wonder. Let yourself be a mirror, soft and open, not seeking, not questioning, just gently reflecting back the light of the moment. And if your mind drifts, that's no mistake. That's the body's way of saying, "I've seen enough for today." Let the moon rise unseen. Let the thoughts pass unmeasured. You're not the observer anymore. You're the quiet that remains after all watching has ceased. Sleep now, not because you must, but because it's safe to stop looking. The ship that never arrives. You left once, or maybe more than once. A city, a habit, a version of yourself. And somewhere along the way, walking through silent airports or crossing streets that don't know your name, you begin to wonder, who is it that returns? That question doesn't knock. It breathes beside you, quiet, present, like fog at dawn. There's an old thought experiment, the ship of Theseus, a vessel slowly rebuilt, piece by piece, over time. Every plank replaced, every rope renewed, until nothing of the original remains. And still, it's called the same ship. But what about you? A girl walks through the museum and pauses. "Do you think I'm still me?" she says. "If I can't remember who I was last year?" Her voice is soft, not seeking answers, just presence. And in that moment, you feel it too. That strange dissonance between memory and matter, between the weight of your name and the lightness of your becoming. You shed, you shift. Hair grows, cells die, ideas unravel. You say things now you would have feared then, or no longer say what once felt like gospel. Is it still you behind the eyes? Or just the echo of someone always arriving? Maybe the self isn't a solid. Maybe it's not meant to be. Maybe it's like water in a cupped hand, always slipping, yet never gone. A process, a rhythm, a ripple that never repeats the same shape twice. Earlier today, someone smiled at you and said, "You seem calmer now." And you wanted to say, "That's because part of me dissolved last week, and part of me is already somewhere else." But instead, you just smiled. Because even if they don't see the change, you do. So drift a little now. You don't need to hold it all together. Not the face. Not the story. Let the pieces float. Let the name be just a gentle sound, not a prison. You are allowed to outgrow, to forget, to begin again. The ship never truly arrives, and neither do you. But in this moment, right now, you are enough. A becoming, not a being. And that maybe is the most honest version of you there's ever been. The dream that wakes you up, somewhere between the throb of your heartbeat and the hush behind your eyelids, there's a question that refuses to be silenced. What if this, right now, is the dream? It doesn't shout. It whispers, like the low hum of a train that's been running all night long in your subconscious. And now, it's asking you gently, how do you know you're awake? On a dim train platform, a man folds his newspaper and says without looking up, "I always wake up right before the train hits." You laugh, uncertain. But how do you know this isn't still the dream? He looks at you, calm as the fog around your thoughts, and says, "Does it matter?" Philosophers have been unsettled by this thought for centuries. Zhuangzi once dreamed he was a butterfly, or perhaps the butterfly was dreaming it was Zhuangzi. Descartes doubted everything except the fact he was doubting. But here, now, without textbooks or old scrolls, the dilemma presses softly on your chest like the weight of a thick blanket on a restless night. If you can't prove you're awake, what shifts inside you? Maybe nothing. Maybe it's just another echo in the mind's long corridor. But maybe everything softens. The urgency dissolves. The identity you've clung to like a name tag starts to blur. Because if this is a dream, then you can stop proving something. You can simply be. A woman on the bus leans over and says, "You drop this." You glance down. It's a feather. You don't remember carrying one. She smiles. Maybe it's from your other self, the one who sleeps while you wander. Isn't it strange how dreams give us permission to feel what waking life sometimes forbids? To fly, to vanish, to cry without apology. So what happens if this life is one of those dreams? One stitched together by memories, expectations, and the quiet ache of wondering what comes next. The walls, the chairs, the calendar on your fridge, they all feel real. But in dreams, don't they too? The only real difference, perhaps, is how tightly we hold onto the meaning of things. In waking life, the chair is for sitting. In dreams, it's for floating, or for turning into a dog, or for carrying a secret. And so you rest your head, not to escape, but to return to the softer you, the one who doesn't rush to prove, but slowly exhales into the truth that not everything must be solved to be sacred. So if this is a dream, let it be the kind that wakes you up inside, not with panic, but with peace. Let it be the dream that teaches you to see more deeply, not just with eyes, but with presence. Close them now, not to sleep, but to arrive somewhere quieter, somewhere you've always known, but never needed to name. The light behind closed eyes. Close your eyes, not just gently, but deeply, like you're tucking the world beneath your lids and letting silence stretch across your mind. In that quiet, do you notice it? The flickers? The faint glow behind the dark? Some call it imagination, others call it memory. But for a moment, it feels like vision, real vision, rising without a single ray of light. There's a strange beauty in this. In the darkness, when your physical eyes surrender, something else awakens. Maybe it's the echo of a memory, your grandmother's kitchen, the smell of oranges, the way the light once filtered through a window you haven't seen in years. Or maybe it's something entirely new, a color you've never known, a shape that doesn't exist outside your mind, and yet you see it, not with your eyes, but with something deeper, with your mind, your soul. What part of us is doing the seeing when sight lets go? This is where things get quietly mysterious. If we can dream of light while in total darkness, if our brain can generate light, textures, motion, and entire worlds without any visual input, what does that say about perception? Maybe it isn't passive. Maybe you're not simply receiving the world, but actively projecting it. Maybe your entire experience of seeing is more like painting than photography. Two people sit on a porch at night. One whispers, "I see colors when I close my eyes, like sparks, like fading sunsets. Is that just my brain firing off nonsense?" The other replies, "Or maybe it's your brain remembering what it once knew, or imagining what it hopes to feel." They sit in silence, the dark between them filled with more than absence. Because in that darkness, they're both illuminated, not by streetlights or stars, but by the simple truth that sight was never just about the eyes. Think about it. Every dream you've ever had happened with your eyes shut. Yet, you've flown through cities, revisited people who are long gone, stood in impossible places with impossible colors. The question isn't whether you can see without your eyes. You already have. The real question is, what's doing the seeing? Is it your mind's longing for connection? A whisper from your unconscious? A deeper self trying to show you something the outside world never could? Stay here for a while. Let your closed eyes become a canvas. Let the stillness sharpen your inner vision. Because sometimes, the clearest images come not in the brightness of day, but in the hush of inner dark. And if you listen carefully, even that silence begins to glow. The coin with two same sides. Sometimes, late at night, when the world goes quiet and the thoughts begin to whisper instead of shout, You wonder, did I ever really choose, or was I always just following a thread already sewn into the fabric of time? There's a strange comfort in imagining life as a coin, spinning endlessly in the air, suspended between outcomes, never truly landing, never truly deciding. And yet, what if that coin has the same image on both sides? We are taught that life is a series of choices. Turn left or right, say yes or no, love or let go. But beneath the illusion of choice lies a question that unsettles the soul. What if every decision we make is not a fork in the road, but a predetermined curve in a path we were always meant to walk? What if that sense of agency we cling to is just a trick of the light, a comforting hallucination created by a mind desperate to feel in control? I thought I was deciding, he says, tracing the rim of his coffee mug with a fingertip. But looking back, every step felt inevitable. She tilts her head, thoughtful. Do you mean like fate? No, he replies softly. More like gravity. I wasn't pulled by destiny. I was just falling in a direction that was already set. This is the dilemma of determinism. If every cause triggers an effect, and every effect has its roots in a cause before it, then our lives become a seamless chain. No gaps, no leaps, no true freedom. You didn't choose to be born where you were, to be raised the way you were, to inherit the fears and dreams that now shape your every reaction. And if your past shaped your present, and your present sets the conditions for your future, where is the room for choice? The coin flips again in your mind. It spins not with tension, but with certainty. You stare at it, not to guess which way it will fall, but to glimpse what it means mid-flight. That's where the mystery lives. Not in the result, but in the moment of suspension, where the illusion of freedom breathes just long enough to feel real. It's not about the side it lands on. It never was. The insight lives in the air, in the dance of uncertainty that hides the script beneath it. And maybe, just maybe, the beauty of life is not in escaping the script, but in how we perform it, knowing it may have always been written. Let the coin spin. Let it be. Let it show you everything you were too busy choosing to see. The thought that thinks you. Close your eyes for a moment and listen, not to the world around you, but to the world inside. There's a current there. Thoughts rise and fall like waves on a shore you don't remember building. You don't summon them, not really. They appear uninvited, sometimes welcome, sometimes not. A memory, a worry, a fragment of a conversation from 3 years ago. Who decided to bring that back? Not you, right? But then, who is you? What if the you hold on to so tightly is not the captain of the ship, but the wake left behind? What if you are not the one thinking the thoughts, but the thought itself? A flicker, a ripple, a temporary pattern in a much larger sea. Suddenly, the idea of being a fixed identity begins to soften. The boundary between subject and object, observer and observed, fades. You're no longer the lighthouse standing tall above the water. You're the shimmer in the wave reflecting its light. Two people lie in the dark, their voices soft and tired. Have you ever thought about where your thoughts come from? Sometimes, it's weird. I'll just be walking and boom, an image, a sentence, something I didn't ask for. So, do you think we really control our minds? I don't know. Maybe we just follow them, like leaves on a stream. That stream, if you follow it far enough, doesn't have a single source. It's rain and time and melting glaciers and underground springs. In the same way, your mind is not a single point of origin. It's an echo chamber of memory, biology, language, experience. A ripple, not a fountain. This isn't meant to dissolve your sense of self into nothing. Quite the opposite. It invites you to witness the self as something more fluid, more alive, to not trap it in definitions. Because when you stop trying to be the thinker, you become the thought. And that's where the dance begins, where silence starts speaking, where the ripple learns it's part of the ocean. So let go, just for a moment. Drift. Feel the current of your mind, not as something you drive, but something you ride. And as the next thought arises, not from you, but through you, ask quietly, who is doing the thinking? Or better yet, what is being thought into being? We're floating now. Let's follow that ripple forward. There's a new shore waiting. And maybe on that shore, we'll finally find the language for the self that doesn't need a name. The lock without a key. Some questions arrive in the mind like ancient doors, rusted, silent, unyielding. But not every question wants to be opened. Some don't even have a lock. They only look like puzzles. You reach for them, eager to solve, to pry them open, to find what's been hidden. And yet, as your fingers hover over the invisible mechanism, you begin to see, not the question, but your reflection. You see your hunger for certainty, your fear of not knowing, your need for control disguised as curiosity. What if the question was never really external? What if it was a mirror, and you were staring into your own eyes the whole time? There's a certain kind of question that doesn't beg for an answer. It watches you instead. The more you twist and fumble for a key, the more lost you feel. Because the mystery doesn't live behind the door. It lives inside you. The paradox of the unknowable is that we think the pain comes from not having an answer, when in truth, the ache often lies in wanting one so desperately. I once overheard a quiet conversation on a night train. A man in his late 50s, with tired eyes and a voice softened by loss, whispered to the woman next to him, "I've spent my whole life asking why she left, and I still don't know. Maybe that's not the point anymore." She said nothing, just placed her hand gently over his. No lock, no key, just presence. Maybe some questions are here not to be solved, but to slow us down, to hush the noise, to invite us into a stillness so rare that even silence feels like speech. Perhaps life offers us these mysteries not as riddles, but as resting places. They don't need to be unlocked. They need to be held. It's a strange kind of wisdom to stop reaching, to stop hammering at the unknown with intellect, and instead sit beside it, like an old friend who doesn't need to talk. What if the goal isn't to open every door, but to notice which ones are meant to remain unopened? What if the purpose of some questions is simply to be companions in the dark? In those moments, the real transformation doesn't come from discovering an answer. It comes from softening into the space where answers don't matter, where you are no longer a seeker with a mission, but a soul with enough courage to rest beside the mystery. There is peace in the pause. So rest your hands now. Let the lock be a lock. The next question won't ask you to turn any handles or search for any hidden meanings. It only asks that you sit down beside it, quietly, without needing to know why. And in that quiet, something sacred might unfold. Not an answer, but understanding. The pattern that hides itself. Sometimes in the hush of the night, your mind begins to trace invisible shapes, like constellations sewn between the cracks in your ceiling, or the ghost of a smile on a stranger's face in a passing dream. It's not madness. It's your mind doing what it was built to do: search, connect, reveal. We are pattern-seeking creatures, drawn to order the way moths are drawn to flame. But sometimes the flame isn't there, or worse, it is, and no one else sees it. There's a name for this gentle hallucination: pareidolia, the phenomenon where you see faces in clouds, animals in marble veins, or signs in meaningless numbers. But what if it's not just your imagination? What if the pattern is real, just veiled, only visible to those with the right kind of gaze, the kind that sees not just with the eyes, but with a quiet knowing beneath them? Imagine two people standing before the same night sky. One sees scattered stars, random and cold. The other sees a story: Orion hunting, Cassiopeia waiting, the Milky Way spilling ancient light. Did the second person invent the pattern, or did they simply receive it? A whisper of wind through an open window might sound like nonsense to one ear and a message to another. Does meaning only exist once it's perceived? Or is it always there, waiting for someone attuned enough to catch it? Hey, do you ever feel like some things are trying to talk to you? Like what? Like the way street lights flicker when you walk by, or when you keep seeing the same number over and over. You know it's probably nothing, but it feels like something. Yeah, I've had that. It's like the universe is nudging you, or maybe just winking. In a world so heavy with noise, maybe the rarest wisdom is knowing what not to explain. Some patterns aren't meant to be decoded by the many. They're gifts for the few. And in that quiet noticing, there is a strange freedom, a sense that something, somewhere, was meant for you and you alone. So let's rest in that gentle ambiguity. Let's not chase the need for everyone to understand. There is beauty in seeing something others miss, and peace in not needing to prove that you saw it at all. The mask that forgot. It's a mask. There's a quiet moment, usually in the middle of the night, when the performance slips. You find yourself staring at the ceiling, wondering, not about what you have to do tomorrow, but about who you've actually become. The face you've shown the world all day, the dependable one, the cheerful one, the put-together one, sits heavy like stage makeup you forgot to wipe off. And in that silence, a deeper question hums beneath the surface. Is this really me? Or just the mask I've worn for so long, I've forgotten it was ever a mask at all. We all wear them. Little roles we step into without even thinking. The funny friend who never lets the mood drop. The responsible worker who never shows weakness. The partner who swallows doubt in the name of peace. At first, it's a game. We put on the mask because it helps. Helps us belong. Helps us be loved. Helps us feel useful. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, the lines between actor and character begin to blur. We stop stepping into the role. The role starts stepping into us. And one day, you wake up inside a version of yourself that feels practiced, but not quite real. The laugh still comes, but it's automatic. The confidence looks right in the mirror, but feels empty in the chest. You find yourself reacting the way you should, not the way your gut whispers you want to. And the more you perform, the more the original self, the messy, flawed, beautiful you, feels like a forgotten language, one you once spoke fluently, but can no longer translate. So what do? Tear off the mask all at once? But what if what's behind it isn't strong enough to stand? What if the mask isn't just decoration? It's scaffolding. That's the paradox, isn't it? The very thing that protected you now imprisons you. And yet, stripping it away too quickly might cause the whole identity to collapse. Maybe the unmasking doesn't need to be violent. Maybe it's not about rejection, but remembrance. A gentle peeling back. a conversation between the you that adapted to survive and the you that longs to breathe. What if people don't like who I really am? Someone whispers in the dark. And the answer, quiet but true, some won't, but the ones who stay will love you, not the costume. You don't have to drop all the roles. Life still asks you to play. But maybe, just maybe, you can step on stage with less hiding and more heart. Maybe you can remember that the most powerful presence doesn't perform. It reveals. Let the mask soften now, not with shame, but with kindness. You are not the mask. You are the soul that learned how to wear it. And now, you are learning how to gently remove it. Breathe. The next idea is coming, not with a mask, but with a whisper. The reflection that lies. Do mirrors ever really tell the truth? You stand in front of it each morning, same eyes, same tilt of the jaw, a flicker of judgment in your glance, quick but deep. There's no one else there, yet the moment feels strangely public, as if someone is watching you watch yourself. I don't know why I always look tired in this bathroom light, one man mutters, wiping fog from the glass. His partner, brushing teeth beside him, shrugs. Maybe you only look tired when you're alone. It's not reversal that distorts, it's familiarity. The mirror holds a version of you that only you ever see, yet it's the one you believe most. Even when someone says you looked joyful last night, you think of this morning's tired face, that sag under the eyes. You trust the mirror's silence over their words. But should you? Maybe we find comfort in its stillness. It never interrupts, never contradicts, and somehow that stillness becomes mistaken for truth. But silence isn't always honesty. Sometimes it just means absence, like a voicemail never left, like a question swallowed instead of spoken. Mirrors don't lie because they want to. They lie because they don't speak at all. A woman once paused before leaving for a party. Her friend asked, "You okay?" She hesitated, then smiled tightly. "Yeah. I just don't feel like I look like me right now." The friend blinked. "Then maybe the mirror doesn't know you as well as I do." That stayed with her, because perhaps all mirrors, physical or emotional, are illusions made believable by their stillness. They don't reflect reality. They reflect what we're rehearsing. Maybe that's why staring too long at a reflection feels strange, almost unreal. The longer you look, the less you recognize. So tonight, step away from that glass. Let the surface settle. Let the light fade behind your eyelids, because the truest reflection isn't what appears when you look out, but what echoes back when you look in. Let that be enough for now. The next thought doesn't need a mirror, just a little stillness of your own. The box that contains everything. Late at night, as the mind quiets and the world exhales, there comes a peculiar question. What if there was a box that held everything? Every answer, every truth, every contradiction. The known, the unknown, and even the unknowable. A box not made of wood or steel, but of thought. Limitless, infinite, yet somehow still a container. Like a cosmic folder? She asks, her voice low under the blanket of twilight. Maybe, he replies, turning toward the ceiling. But if it really contained everything, then it would have to include things we haven't even imagined yet. And if it includes the unimaginable, she trails off, her voice lost in the quiet hum of night. Then it isn't containable anymore, he finishes. This is the paradox of totality. The mind wants to grasp it, to put reality in a neat conceptual box, label it, archive it, and feel a sense of closure. But every time we try to enclose the whole, a piece slips out. Not because we're not smart enough, but because the very act of including the unknown invites it to expand. It's like trying to hug a shadow. You might feel close, but never quite touch it. Philosophers wrestled with this idea in what's known as the set of all sets problem. If you could list every set, would the list itself be a set? If so, is it on the list or outside of it? The logic collapses, looping back on itself like a snake eating its tail. Mystics speak of the unspeakable, truths that dissolve the moment you try to name them. And maybe they're right. Maybe some things are not meant to be known, but felt at the edge of knowing. Like trying to describe the scent of a dream, she whispers. Or the sound of silence, he adds. Our minds are story makers, pattern finders, builders of meaning. But even the most brilliant mind stands like a child before the ocean when faced with totality. There's something holy about the horizon you can't cross, something humbling in not being able to place the infinite into a diagram or drawer. So tonight, let's not seek to understand it all. Let's not demand answers from the universe like impatient students. Instead, let's rest near that edge, the border between comprehension and wonder. Let the wind from the beyond brush our thoughts, not to frighten us, but to remind us we are alive. And maybe, just maybe, that mysterious breeze isn't a warning of limits, but a gentle invitation to dream past them. The puzzle with missing pieces. We grow up believing that every question must have an answer, every story a conclusion, every broken thing a way to be fixed. Completion, it seems, is hardwired into how we measure progress, closure, even peace. We try to patch the holes, fill the blanks, connect the fragments into a picture that finally makes sense. But what if that instinct, noble as it feels, is the very thing that blinds us? There's a quiet kind of ache in things that feel unfinished. It's the open door in a memory, the unsent letter in your drawer, the conversation you keep replaying because you never got to say what really mattered. We call it longing, but it might be something else. What if those absences aren't flaws in the design, but the design itself? Two friends lie back on a patch of grass beneath a sky thick with stars. One of them sighs. I just wish I knew why she left, he whispers. The other doesn't offer an answer. He simply says, maybe not knowing is part of what makes you love her still. There's something unsettling in that idea, but also, strangely, something peaceful. Think of a puzzle. You've worked on it for hours. You're down to the last stretch, and then one piece is missing. You search the floor, the box, under the table. Nothing. It's gone. Your eyes fixate on the hole in the image, on what isn't there. But if you were to step back, maybe the missing piece makes the rest feel more real, more human. Because life doesn't offer us the kind of endings we were promised in fairy tales. Some stories stop without a period. Some people leave without warning. And some answers never arrive. But when you look closer, that missingness is what gives the rest of it texture. It's the empty space that makes the shape of what is stand out more sharply. A child once asked her grandfather, "Why is the moon not always full?" He smiled and said, "If it were, you'd never see it grow." Completion is tempting. It's comforting. But wholeness, that's different. Wholeness might mean holding your grief and your gratitude in the same breath. It might mean learning to love the shape of something even when a part of it is missing. It might mean realizing you're not broken because you don't have all the answers. You're whole because you're still asking the questions. So tonight, don't reach for the final piece. Don't rush to solve what life hasn't handed you. Just be here, in the stillness, in the mystery. Let yourself feel the beauty of the picture as it is. Let's sit with the incomplete now. Wholeness is a feeling, not a finish line. The symphony with no composer. There's a kind of music that doesn't seem to come from anyone. No fingers pluck the strings, no baton waves in the air, and yet, somehow, it plays. A perfect rhythm, rising and falling, unfolding with such elegance that it makes you stop and wonder, who wrote this? Or did it write itself? Out in the cosmos, galaxies twist like vinyl records spinning in slow motion, not because anyone told them to. They just do. Stars gather, planets fall into line, moons loop and sway in synchrony. Life too emerges with the same mysterious cadence. No one told a cell to divide. No one instructed a seed to reach toward light. Yet they move, each part playing its role in an invisible arrangement. Ecosystems hum with this same hidden harmony. A forest balances itself. Wolves return to Yellowstone, and rivers change their path. No one gave a speech. No leader gave a command. And yet, the system responds, as if listening to a melody encoded in silence. Even in your own mind, thoughts rise and fall like musical phrases. You think you're choosing them, but are you? Or are you simply the audience to the performance happening within? A man once asked his friend, "Don't you ever feel like your life is a song you didn't write but somehow know by heart?" His friend looked up from the bench, the wind brushing through leaves overhead. "Maybe that's the point," he said. "You don't have to know the composer to feel the music. Maybe you are the music." That's the tension, isn't it? If there's no composer, no grand designer, no conductor in the sky, does that make the song less meaningful? Or more open? More yours? Maybe removing the composer doesn't strip away the magic. Maybe it frees you from the pressure of getting it right. It turns life into jazz, a bit chaotic, a bit messy, but full of improvisation. You don't have to follow a sheet. You just have to listen to the moment, to the other players, to the silence between the notes. The beauty of the symphony isn't in who wrote it. It's in how it unfolds in real time, how the sounds blend and clash, how sometimes the notes don't make sense until they do. And in that moment of unexpected harmony, something inside you says, yes, this. So perhaps the meaning of the music isn't lost without a composer. Perhaps the meaning is found because there isn't one. You get to bring your story, your ache, your wonder. Your ears become part of the orchestra. Your listening becomes the final instrument. Let's not search for the hidden hands behind the strings tonight. Let's not try to explain it all away. Let's just listen to the hum of your breath, the distant creak of the night, the quiet rhythm of your thoughts as they slow, not to understand, not to control, but to be part of the song. The universe that forgets itself. There's a story older than time, whispered not in words, but in the pulse of stars and the rhythm of tides. It begins before beginnings, when there was no sky, no breath, no watcher to see the watching, just presence, still, aware, vast beyond vast. In Hindu cosmology, they call it Brahman, the infinite consciousness that dreamed reality into being, not by will, but by simply imagining itself. Then, in a flash too slow for clocks, the dream took form. Time, space, galaxies, light, each a ripple in the sleeping mind of the divine. And somewhere along the line, in a quiet corner of that vastness, something stirred. You, me, United States. But here's the paradox. In dreaming us into existence, the universe also had to forget it was dreaming. Because to truly feel love, loss, awe, and joy, it had to believe in separation, It had to convince itself it wasn't everything. Modern physics tiptoes toward this same abyss. Quantum entanglement hints that maybe consciousness isn't just in your head, it's woven into the fabric of space-time. The observer affects the observed not just metaphorically, but physically. Which begs the question, if the cosmos became aware, could it forget? And if so, would that forgetting look a lot like you? What if you are not a drop in the ocean, but the ocean disguised as a drop, just to feel what it's like to be small, vulnerable, curious again? What if every moment of wonder, when you see a child's laugh, a sunset's flame, or the breath catching in your throat, what if that's the universe remembering itself? Briefly, tenderly, like an old song from childhood, half familiar and aching with beauty. A voice drifts in your mind one night. Do you think the universe knows we're here? Another answers softly. Maybe we are the part of the universe that asks the question. Maybe we're not just in the dream. We are the dream, and the dreamer too. And what is life, if not an elegant forgetting of our true origin, followed by glimpses, flashes, memories that tug like déjà vu? Maybe your deepest longings aren't for something new, but for something ancient, something you once were. So as your eyes grow heavier and the world blurs, don't resist. Let go. Drift. Because maybe the act of falling asleep is the soul's way of returning to the original mind, the mind before thought, before identity, before the forgetting. And in that sacred drift, let yourself wonder, what if the universe isn't out there, but in here, dreaming you, through you, as you? Let's keep drifting now, not to escape, but to return. The future that creates the past. What if the future isn't waiting for us, but remembering us? Close your eyes for a moment. Picture time not as a line, but as a thread in a tapestry, not stretched out from birth to death, but folded, stitched, tangled. There's a version of you not yet born, already watching you now. A self that hasn't happened, yet already exists, in a place where time loops like breath. In the strange world of quantum mechanics, some experiments suggest that particles react to measurements that haven't even happened yet. It's as if the future reaches back, tapping the past on the shoulder, saying, "Get ready, I'm coming." We think of causes leading to effects, like dominoes falling in order. But what if some of those dominoes fall because of the ones still standing? "Do you believe in fate?" she once asked him, as they lay on a quiet rooftop under a sky too large to hold answers. "I don't know," he replied, "but I've had moments where I felt nudged, like someone gently turned me right when I was about to go left." "Maybe that someone was you," she said, "from the future." And what if she was right? How many times have you felt a quiet tug inside, a decision you couldn't explain, a path you took without logic, a warning that saved you? You called it instinct, a gut feeling, a dream. But what if it was your future self, sending back ripples to steer you just slightly, lovingly, away from what would hurt? We often think the past is fixed, set like concrete. But if time is woven, maybe it's more like clay, soft, and shaped by what lies ahead. Maybe the reason you found the courage to try again wasn't because of your past, but because the future needed you to keep going. Maybe your healing pulled your younger self out of the dark long after they had already suffered. This idea doesn't just belong to science. It lives in you. In the moments where you suddenly forgive yourself, in the flashes where a memory changes shape because you've changed, in the stillness where something deep inside you whispers, You're okay now. It's over. That voice. Could it be you? From beyond the pain? From beyond the choices you haven't made yet? Let's let go of the clock tonight. Let's imagine a time that curves like rivers, flows both forward and back, touching everything at once. You are not only a product of your past, you are the echo of a future still unfolding. Maybe, just maybe, your best days aren't ahead or behind, but everywhere. And now, as you rest, let that whisper guide you, not toward answers, but toward peace, toward a world where time doesn't trap you. It remembers you kindly. The voice that echoes before it speaks. There are moments when something stirs inside you, before a word is formed, before a thought takes shape. A vibration, almost like a gentle hum, pulses through your chest. You can't explain why, and yet you feel it. It arrives uninvited, soft but unmistakable, like the wind brushing the back of your neck before a storm. It's not yet a sentence. It's not even a whisper, but it's there, and you know it. This is the voice that echoes before it speaks. We often think language is what makes things real, that naming a feeling, defining a moment, is what brings it into existence. But what if language is always late to the party? What if reality moves faster than words can follow, and meaning exists before the alphabet ever catches up? In those quiet seconds before we speak, there is something purer than articulation. Like the feeling of missing someone the moment they leave the room, before you've had time to register their absence, like the lump in your throat that knows you're hurt before you admit it. This is truth, unspoken, but undeniable. Hey, do you ever get that feeling something's off, but you don't know what it is yet? Yeah, it's like, my body knows before my brain does. I can't explain it, but it's there. That kind of knowing doesn't ask for proof. It doesn't wait for logic or vocabulary. It just is. And maybe, just maybe, it's the most honest kind of knowing we ever get. The kind that doesn't need to perform for others. The kind that lives inside us, quietly humming until we listen. There's a reason people say, I knew it in my gut. It's not metaphor. It's memory before memory. It's the soul tapping the body on the shoulder to say, wake up. Something matters here. So what happens when we don't listen to that echo? When we force it into definitions, twist it into sentences too small to hold its shape? Sometimes we lose it. The knowing becomes a theory. The feeling becomes a phrase. And the aliveness of it dims just a little. But what if we didn't rush to name everything? What if we let some things stay unspoken? Just for a while. Float with that feeling now. You don't need to understand it. You don't need to translate it. Let it echo in your chest like music you don't recognize, but somehow remember. Let the truth arrive before the sentence, before the word, before the thought. And in that silence, maybe you'll realize you've known all along. The thought. You can't think. There are thoughts you can't think, at least not yet. They don't arrive like guests at the door, dressed in familiar language, ready to shake hands with your mind. No, these thoughts live beyond the borderlands of cognition, where meaning begins to dissolve into mist. Try this. Imagine a brand new color, not just a new name or a mix of old shades, but something utterly beyond the visible spectrum, something your eyes have never seen and your mind can't anchor. Or try visualizing a shape with only one side, not curved, not twisted, just one. Your mind falters, not because it's broken, but because it's loyal to logic, to pattern, to the tools it has always used. But what if imagination doesn't end where we think it does? What if it's not imagination that fails, but language that gets in the way? Because language is a net, and sometimes it snags only the fish we already know exist. It's possible the ocean is deeper than speech allows, and in that silent depth, perhaps there are thoughts that don't come in words, but in feelings or symbols or dreams. Maybe they arrive not through conscious effort, but when consciousness loosens its grip. Hey, have you ever tried to think of a color that doesn't exist? What do you mean? Like a mix of purple and green? No, I mean something you can't even describe. A color no one's ever seen. Like alien to the mind. I don't think that's possible. Yeah, I used to think that too. But then one night, just before falling asleep, I felt it, not saw it. Just felt that it was there, like the mind brushed up against something it couldn't hold. That's kind of beautiful and kind of scary. We spend so much of our lives sharpening thought like a blade, carving reason into the world's raw edges. But sometimes truth arrives soft, blurry, wordless, and the doorway to it isn't through thinking harder, it's through letting go. That's where sleep enters, not as absence, but as invitation, a return to the original place where mind and mystery meet without needing permission. Dreams don't ask for logic, they make no promises of clarity, and yet, in their drifting scenes, where faces change mid-sentence and buildings breathe, somehow, a deeper coherence pulses. Could it be that the thoughts we can't think with our waking mind find room to stretch there? So tonight, when you lay your head down, don't wrestle with thought. Let it unspool. Let the edges of what's possible blur. You don't have to name what arrives next. You only need to feel the hush before it does. That's where the unimaginable waits, not to be understood, but to be held. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. Now, let's lean into that unknown together. Slowly, softly, with nothing to grasp but wonder. The mind that watches itself. Sleep. Somewhere between the hush of a whisper and the weightlessness of a falling leaf, there is a threshold where thought begins to loosen its grip. You feel it not as a moment, but as a sensation, the soft dissolve of waking into sleep. And yet, something watches, not with eyes, but with a presence, not to control, but to witness. This is the realm where lucid dreamers tread lightly, where monks sit still long enough to feel the membrane between waking and dreaming stretch thin. It's not quite sleep, not quite wakefulness, a liminal hush where the mind becomes both the actor and the audience. You drift, but you are still aware that you are drifting. You are the sleeper, and strangely, the guardian of that sleep. It's here where paradox lives quietly. Can the mind cradle itself? Can awareness sing itself a lullaby, knowing that to truly fall asleep, it must also let go of the very thread it's holding? The idea that you can observe your own descent into unconsciousness, like a candle noticing its own flame flickering out, is both comforting and impossible. In the slow swirl of this space, thoughts don't vanish. They soften. They become velvet impressions rather than sharp ideas. You might see a door. You might hear a voice, one that you didn't summon, but somehow knew was coming. You might float above your body, not with fear, but with a hush of wonder, as though your mind is stretching to touch itself from the outside. Are you asleep? Someone whispers beside you. I don't know, you murmur back, smiling in the half-light of that in-between. There's no urgency here, no need to name what's happening, because naming it would tighten the string, would pull you back. Instead, you stay in that seam between awareness and surrender, not clinging, not falling, just being. And maybe that's what true rest is. Not the absence of awareness, but the surrender of control, a kind of peace that doesn't need to be blind, a letting go that still sees. So rest here a little longer. Let the watcher in you soften. Let the thinker become the dreamed. Let your breath lengthen without command, like waves pulling away from shore. You don't need to decide what happens next. The mind will carry itself. And you are simply here, on the soft edge, where consciousness holds itself gently before letting go. The dice that rolls itself. There's something quietly mysterious about the sound of dice rolling in the dark. You don't know what number will appear, but still, you listen, you hope, you brace. That moment of suspense feels like life itself. We move through our days as if choosing, as if steering, but beneath the surface, something ancient rolls us forward. So ask yourself this: when the dice of your life tumble across the table of existence, who truly throws them? Science doesn't answer easily. Chaos theory tells us that what looks like randomness might just be an intricate pattern too complex for the eye to catch. Even the flutter of a butterfly's wing can cause a hurricane across oceans. Everything reacts to everything. Even your breath right now might be stirring air molecules that change the shape of tomorrow's weather. Does that still feel like chance? Now enter quantum physics, a world so strange it bends our understanding of reality. Here, particles exist in multiple states at once. A photon doesn't choose whether it's a wave or a particle until someone observes it. That's the heart of the mystery. The dice doesn't settle until it knows someone is watching. But who is the watcher? Is it you peering into your life with expectation? Or is it something beyond the self, silently shaping your path with unseen intention? A voice might interrupt here, soft, casual. Hey, do you believe in luck? Another responds, I don't know. Sometimes things just feel too perfect to be random. But then again, life's thrown me some real curveballs too. That's the thing, the first voice says. Maybe luck isn't real. Maybe it's just how well we dance when things fall out of our hands. And maybe that's the truth. Maybe fate isn't a strict order or a complete mess. Maybe it's more like jazz. Half structure, half improv. The dice rolls itself. And you're the one who moves to the rhythm it creates. Some days, it's a slow waltz. Other days, a chaotic sprint. But either way, you don't get to stop the roll. You only get to choose how you respond. It's tempting to wait, to see how the numbers fall before making a move, to let life reveal its outcomes before you speak. Love, leap. But what if you didn't wait? What if you acted not because the dice promised success, but because you're alive to feel the tumble? That's courage, not knowing, but still dancing. So let the dice roll again. You don't need to know the number yet. Just listen to the sound. It's the universe playing its game and inviting you to join, not as the player, not as the dice, but as the moment in between. The silence just before fate lands, the heartbeat in suspense. And maybe, just maybe, that's where you're most real. Not in control, not lost, just listening, just alive. The loop you're already in. You're brushing your teeth. The water runs, the light hums. A part of you pauses, not because something is wrong, but because it all feels oddly familiar, not déjà vu. Deeper, like a quiet sense that this exact moment has curled around before. Somewhere in the folds of thought, Nietzsche once whispered a wild idea that every second, every gesture, every breath is fated to return again and again and again. The eternal recurrence, the loop you never noticed. Do you think we've had this conversation before? One voice speaks as they lie under a thin blanket of stars. The other shifts slightly, staring up at the same black ceiling of the sky. Would it matter if we had? Maybe not. But if we're stuck in the loop, I'd rather be kind in it. And that's the ache hidden in the beauty. If this moment has come before, then every moment is a ripple of who you've already been, and yet still get to become. The choice isn't whether this loop exists. The choice is whether you'll live it like it's sacred. So maybe the small things, your laugh, your pause before replying, your decision to stay when it would have been easier to leave, maybe those aren't small at all. Maybe they are echoes, still ringing from lives already lived. Maybe your tenderness tonight will greet you again in another century in the soft gesture of a stranger who holds the door and doesn't even know why. And maybe you've already held that door. Maybe you will again. But for now, let the circle cradle you like a lullaby with no ending. No pressure to figure it out. Just the sense that if this is the 1,000th loop, you've gotten gentler with each one. So breathe and let that question stay in your chest, unanswered, unhurried. Because if we are looping, at least tonight, this loop feels warm. And sleep, like all things, will find you again. The question that hides its answer. There are questions that arrive not like arrows, but like seeds. They don't pierce, they plant. What is the meaning of life? You've heard it whispered late at night, or mumbled after loss, or wondered quietly in a long silence. It doesn't demand an answer, not really. It lingers. It stretches the edges of the self, pulling open the curtain just a little more to let the mystery in. Some questions aren't maps. They're mirrors. They don't show you where to go. They show you what's growing inside as you travel. The moment we try to answer a question like that, it slips between our fingers. Because maybe it was never looking for a solution. Maybe it just wanted to be heard. Maybe the asking itself is what moves you closer to something true. A young woman once asked her grandfather, "Why do we keep asking questions we can't answer?" He smiled and replied, "So we stay alive in the parts of us that wonder." That moment never left her, because in a world obsessed with certainty, she had just discovered the sacredness of not knowing. If a question plants itself inside you, it does something strange. It turns your confusion into compost. It nourishes a part of you that books can't reach. You find yourself becoming gentler, slower, more open. Not because you've solved anything, but because you've allowed the question to shape you. You've become the soil it needed. And that soil is rich not with answers, but with presence. Look at the stars tonight. Do they answer anything? Or do they simply ask, "Aren't you amazed?" Watch how a child stares into the sky without needing a single explanation. That child hasn't lost their roots in mystery yet, but we often do. We trade wonder for clarity, curiosity for control. But the universe doesn't reward control. It rewards surrender. And surrender doesn't mean giving up. It means giving in. Letting the seed of the question rest inside you without forcing it to grow. Letting it be there without naming it, without defining it, without pressing it into usefulness. Maybe the meaning of life is to ask what the meaning of life is, and let that question soften you. So tonight, let's not try to solve. Let's not chase the conclusion. Let's become quiet, gentle earth again, because the seed is already planted, and the roots are already growing. Let's sit beside the question now and listen. The butterfly that remembers being the storm. A butterfly flutters its wings in silence, light, unnoticed, gentle. Somewhere across the world, a storm begins to form, violent and loud, sweeping over cities that never knew the source of their fate. This is more than a poetic metaphor. It's the butterfly effect, chaos theory's delicate truth that even the smallest action can shift the destiny of something far away. But let's sit with this idea longer, not in the way science textbooks present it, but in the way your soul might feel it on a quiet night. What if you are both, the butterfly and the storm, the one who flutters without sound, and the one who rages without remembering where it all began? We're taught to believe that power only comes from loudness, from scale, from control. But what if it's the subtle breath, the glance, the half-forgotten word that truly moves the world? A woman sits by her window, staring out into a fading sky, her fingers resting on a coffee mug. She thinks of a friend she hasn't called in years. She doesn't pick up the phone, but the thought lingers like perfume in a hallway. Across town, the friend stirs. Nothing has happened, and yet everything has. Some part of us is always listening for the winds that carry forgotten echoes. You think people can really feel that? One voice asks in a whisper. Feel what? When someone thinks about them, even from far away? The other person takes a long breath, then nods. Not with their mind, maybe, but with whatever part of us was there before language. This isn't about logic, it's about connection, about how even the choices we dismiss as meaningless may become part of someone else's turning point. The apology we never spoke, the smile we offered a stranger, the moment we decided not to speak out, or finally did. These things don't vanish. They ripple. Maybe you don't remember being the storm because storms don't hold memories. They become them. And maybe that's what we're doing too. Becoming the memory of some gentle beginning, some hidden cause, some breeze that no one noticed, but changed the course of everything. What if you are more powerful than you've been led to believe, not in the dramatic sense, but in the quiet one? Not with a megaphone, but with a whisper that bends the weather of the soul. Perhaps your pain once echoed through someone else's courage, or your silence became the ground on which another found stillness. We can't trace these things in spreadsheets, but we feel them deep in the marrow. Tonight, rest with the thought that you don't need to see the storm to know you've shaped it. The air remembers. The universe keeps notes in invisible ink. And maybe the wind outside your window is just the world reminding you of your unseen impact. Let's drift now, not away from this idea, but deeper into it. On that same breeze that once carried a butterfly's wings toward the next wave of wonder waiting in the quiet. The universe that asks you back. For centuries, poets have whispered to the stars, monks have chanted to the void, and lovers have spoken their secrets into the night, hoping some part of it all was awake. Maybe they weren't wrong. Some physicists now entertain a theory so delicate it sounds like a myth, that consciousness might not be something locked inside your skull, but something that extends outward, woven into the very fabric of space and time itself. Not just a mind observing the universe, but a mind within it. It's an idea that makes silence feel less empty. Because if reality is participatory, if the cosmos truly listens, then your most fleeting thoughts carry weight, not because they're grand or loud, but because they exist, and existence in this view is a dialogue, a cosmic call and response. Have you ever felt the strange pull of the moon and thought, is it pulling something in me too? Or caught a coincidence so sharp it felt scripted, as though the universe had winked? Maybe that's not imagination. Maybe that's resonance. Maybe the world hums in response when we speak from the depths of our being. Do you ever talk to the stars? A soft voice in the dark, unsure if it's asking a question or confessing a secret. Only when I need to feel small and understood at the same time, the reply comes, almost shyly. Do you think they listen? Maybe. Or maybe listening is just their way of being. It's not about whether the stars answer in words. They answer in time, in dreams that linger, in winds that shift, in feelings you can't explain but don't want to dismiss. So much of life feels accidental, like scattered stardust. But what if it's all intentional? What if you're a co-creator, a participant in this vast play of being? That would mean your fears, your hopes, your quiet wishes, they don't just vanish, they ripple, outward, inward, somewhere. Every time you dare to wonder, to hope, to love, the fabric of reality tightens a little more around your presence, acknowledging you were here. So then, what would you say if you knew the universe was listening? Not to impress, not to change it, but simply to leave a trace. Would you whisper a wish, offer gratitude, ask a question with no answer, just for the beauty of being heard? Take a moment now, breathe. No one needs to hear it but the sky. Let your thoughts drift out, like smoke from a candle just blown out, warm, rising, fading into everything. And while you whisper, know this: something is already leaning in, ready to reply. Not with noise, but with wonder. The next moment is arriving, and maybe, just maybe, it's been shaped by what you just said. The star that forgot. It was fire. Somewhere, a star is burning with no name, no audience, no fanfare. It doesn't know it's beautiful. It doesn't know that, from some distant place, someone might gaze at its light and wish on it. It simply burns, silently, constantly, faithfully. And maybe you are the same. In the quiet repetition of daily life, we often forget that we're still glowing. You wake up, brush your teeth, answer emails, smile politely, fulfill roles, carry weight. The same rhythm, again and again, like an orbit. In that cycle, something happens. Not an explosion, but a soft erosion. Not a darkness, but a forgetting. The kind of forgetting that's so quiet, you don't even notice it. You forget the spark that first pulled you toward what you love. You forget the thrill that used to follow certain dreams. You forget the way your laughter used to echo off walls you hadn't yet built around yourself. But forgetting isn't extinguishing. A star doesn't stop being fire just because it forgets how to feel like fire. It still radiates, still sends warmth across light years. It's just unnoticed. Maybe you've become so used to carrying your own light that you no longer feel it. Maybe you mistake your own glow for the background. But someone else, seeing you from afar, might marvel, might draw inspiration, might find direction in your heat. I used to write, someone says softly, staring out a window. Why did you stop? I don't know. I guess life happened. I didn't think it mattered anymore. But what if that was your starlight? We live in a world that claps for big fires, loud success, dramatic transformation, viral attention. But there's something holier in the quiet flame that never asked to be seen. The nurse who shows up every night, the father who never missed a recital, the artist who paints just to breathe. That's not mediocrity. That's cosmic endurance. Awareness dims not because the fire is weak, but because routine wraps it like fog. But fog doesn't put out stars. It only hides them from view for a while. And when you remember to look up, when you pause and whisper your own name like a prayer, you might catch the edge of your own glow again. So, have you forgotten what burns inside you? Look back, not to regret, but to recall. That first story you ever told, that first time you made someone smile, that dream you didn't chase but still feel tugging. The light was real. It is real. It doesn't go out just because no one's watching, because maybe the soul isn't a candle. Maybe it's a quiet star, still burning, still waiting, even when no one looks up. Let's drift through that sky now, not to find new stars, but to remember the fire we already are. And if, in this silence, you begin to feel a warmth, don't be surprised. You've been glowing all along. The civilization that never arrives. You're standing at the edge of a vast field at night. No moon, no stars, just silence. You call out softly at first, then louder. Nothing answers. You wait, you whisper again, and still, nothing. This is the feeling at the heart of the Fermi paradox. By all accounts, we should have heard something by now. A signal, a whisper, a footprint in the cosmic dust. With billions of stars older than our sun and billions of planets circling them, the odds suggest we should be latecomers to a universe teeming with life. But the skies remain quiet. No grand civilizations lighting up the galaxy, no distant chatter riding the waves of time, just stillness. So, where is everyone? Maybe we're early. Maybe the orchestra hasn't begun yet, and we're just fiddling with instruments in the dark, waiting for the curtain to rise. Or maybe we're late, so late that the music already played long ago, and all that's left are echoes too faint for us to detect. Perhaps civilizations rise like fireflies, brief and brilliant, but quickly extinguished before they ever meet. There's another possibility, one that's harder to swallow, because it turns the telescope inward. Maybe we're not listening the right way. Maybe we're not even asking the right questions. After all, what if the signal isn't in radio waves or megastructures, but in patterns we've dismissed as noise? What if intelligence doesn't always look like cities or spaceships, but like silence, or fungus, or fields of quantum entanglement pulsing invisibly across space? Or worse, what if they're already here? Not as humanoid visitors, but as dimensions we can't perceive. Forces that whisper through the cracks of our understanding. What if the alien isn't out there, but embedded within the very nature of consciousness, a kind of intelligence so unlike our own that we mistake it for absence? Two friends lie beneath the stars. One turns to the other and says, "You think we're alone?" The other shrugs. "I don't know, but I keep wondering if someone's waiting for us to speak first." A shooting star arcs overhead, silent, unacknowledged, and in that silence, something pulses, not absence, not emptiness, just a presence too vast, too different, too still to greet us in ways we understand. So for now, we wait. But maybe waiting is the answer. Maybe the silence is the message. Let it settle now, not as disappointment, but as awe. After all, even in the most silent symphony, something is always playing. The play with no audience. There is a quiet kind of performance happening every day, unseen, unpraised, unshared. You rise, you breathe, you try. Sometimes you win, sometimes you ache. But no camera rolls, no crowd leans forward, no clapping hands affirm your courage. This is the play with no audience. And perhaps it's the truest kind of theater. We're raised to believe that life is meant to be watched, that meaning comes from others witnessing it, liking, commenting, cheering us on. But what if the most sacred moments are the ones no one sees? The silent victories, the private tears, the decision to keep going, not because anyone expects it, but because something inside you refuses to quit. The act of being becomes the act of bravery. A woman sits alone at a cafe, smiling at a memory. No one knows why. No one needs to. A man writes a poem in the middle of the night and never shows it to anyone. Still, the words matter. A child builds a tower of blocks and then knocks it down, laughing, not for Instagram, not for praise, but for joy. This is living without an audience. This is existing without applause. But here's the question that tugs at the edges of our souls. Are we still real without being seen? If no one acknowledges our effort, does it still count? Does pain still hurt if it's never validated? Does love still bloom if it's never returned? Somewhere deep in us, there is a longing to be witnessed, not just observed, but understood. And yet, if we rely on others to define our worth, we lose ourselves in their reflections. We become mirrors reflecting mirrors, echoes bouncing off other echoes, until we forget the sound of our own voice. So maybe the deeper freedom is this: to perform not for an audience, but for meaning itself. To act with integrity, not because someone is watching, but because you are. Because your soul knows when you're lying to it and when you're standing true. Does the tree still grow if no one walks the forest? Does the flower still open if no one smells it? Does your kindness still matter if it goes unthanked? Yes, always yes. Because existence is not a performance, it's a presence, and your presence is the point, not the performance. If no one ever claps, let your heartbeat be your ovation. If no one ever notices, let your stillness be your standing ovation. You are here. You are doing the scene. And that is enough. Take a bow now, not to be seen, but to honor the fact that you showed up, even when no one asked you to, especially then. And now, with quiet breath and unshaken grace, the next scene begins, not for them, not for fame, not for affirmation, but for you. The memory you never had. Have you ever ached for something that didn't quite exist? A place your feet never touched? A moment you never lived, but your heart still remembers? It's a strange ache, tender, quiet, and unprovable. Like a dream you wake from with tears in your eyes, though you can't say what you were crying for. You tell yourself it must have been nothing, just the mind playing tricks. But deep down, it didn't feel like a trick. It felt like something lost. Nostalgia is a tricky companion. We often think it clings only to memories, to old songs and fading photographs. But sometimes it fastens itself to fantasies, things we only thought we lived. It stirs for colors we've never seen, for lullabies no one ever sang to us. A tree we swear once stood outside our childhood window, though it never did. Or the feeling of someone brushing your hair gently, lovingly, even if no such hands ever existed. These aren't lies. They aren't delusions. They're emotional echoes, remnants of dreams, myths, stories read at bedtime that seeped into the soul like roots into soil. And as we grow, these imagined fragments bloom like old flowers, scenting the present with the past's perfume. You can't name the garden they came from, but you can feel it, blooming still, just beneath your ribs. Some say these are memories from other lives, folded neatly inside us, waiting for a quiet moment to unfold. Others believe the human heart simply knows what it needs, and sometimes invents a past to cradle that need. Whichever it is, the feeling remains the same. You miss something that maybe never was. But the missing is real. And so is the comfort you find in the imagining. Think of it like a map drawn in invisible ink. No one else can read it, but it's etched inside you all the same. When the world feels too sharp or too loud, you unfold that invisible map, not with your hands, but with your longing. You trace its gentle lines with your breath, a winding path through a memoryless memory, and somehow you feel safer. So let's try something now. Close your eyes, not to sleep, but to return. Return to that house you never lived in, that summer you never had, the smell of bread from a kitchen that might only exist in the quiet spaces between your thoughts. Walk through it anyway. Let the floorboards creak. Let the wind hum your name. Let the feeling be enough, even if no photo proves it true. Because maybe memory doesn't need evidence. Maybe feeling is evidence enough. And if you listen closely, that imagined place, it remembers you too. The wish that became a world. A wish doesn't always begin with words. Sometimes it's just the soft pressure behind your ribs, the kind that stirs before your feet even move. A quiet leaning, like gravity, but personal. Some physicists might call it potential energy. Some mystics might call it intention. But to you, it's just the reason you opened your eyes this morning, without even knowing why. A soft rain taps against the window, the kind that doesn't demand attention but somehow makes everything feel more alive. Two strangers sit beneath a cafe awning. One of them says gently, "I didn't plan to come here today, but I think part of me did." The other smiles, cradling a warm cup. Maybe we're all following invisible strings. Some call it fate, others just call it timing. It's easy to think that dreams are separate from the real world, contained, private, unreachable. But what if reality is simply a wish that took root and bloomed? What if the world you see isn't built from stone and law, but from the soft persistence of unspoken longings? Every skyscraper, every song, every child laughing in a hallway, once lived only in someone's mind. Even the stars may have begun with a kind of yearning, not romantic, not desperate, just pure direction without force. A desire so ancient it couldn't be stopped. Close your eyes, just for a moment. What's flickering behind them? A memory? A maybe? A something that hasn't happened yet, but still feels familiar? There's a kind of whisper inside you that never raises its voice. It waits. It watches. And when you listen closely, you realize it's not telling you what to do. It's showing you what you already believe. Someone once walked into a silent room, looked around and said, "This would be perfect for music." And because they wished it so, the walls eventually held melody. So now, in this quiet, before sleep arrives fully, ask yourself gently without needing an answer. What dream has been growing quietly inside you, just by existing? Don't force it to bloom. Just notice. Like a breath you didn't realize you were holding, like a world already building itself, inside the wish that you are. Let's rest in that space now, not waiting for it to arrive, just letting it be true. The compass that points inward. They say every story is a circle, that even the boldest heroes who chase dragons or climb invisible mountains always end up right where they started. Only changed, only softer, or wiser, or finally whole. But what if the real journey wasn't about distance, but depth? What if it's not about where you're going, but what you're shedding on the way? When standing at the edge of your life, holding a map that suddenly erases itself, the roads vanish, the landmarks dissolve, and all that's left is a quiet pull inside your chest, like gravity, but gentler, like your soul remembering something your mind forgot. Do you think people ever find what they're really looking for? I think maybe they do, but not out there. Maybe they find it when they stop looking for it everywhere else. And what if they're afraid to look inside? Then they'll keep walking in circles until one day the silence feels more honest than the noise ever did. The compass you've been holding, maybe it was never broken. Maybe it wasn't pointing north. Maybe it was pointing home. Not a house, not a place, but a presence. You. Before the masks, before the expectations, before the roles you thought you had to play just to be loved. Every step forward strips away a layer. What you believed, what you feared, what you thought made you worthy. Until one day, there's nothing left to chase, no more mountains to climb, just a stillness that doesn't ask you to become anything, just to be. And in that stillness, something strange happens. You don't feel empty, you feel full, not with answers, but with peace. The kind of peace that doesn't come from solving everything, but from realizing there's nothing left to fix, because you were never broken, just buried. So what is the final treasure? It's not a sword. It's not a throne. It's not even wisdom in the way we imagine it. It's knowing yourself without explanation, loving yourself without condition, trusting yourself without needing a sign. Close your eyes. Feel that compass hum beneath your ribs. Let it lead you, not forward, not back, but inward, toward the soft light that's always been there, waiting patiently beneath the noise. No map, no guide, just you. And maybe that's enough. The bubble that contains infinity. A soap bubble, barely larger than a breath, drifts through the air. It catches the sunlight, bends the world and carries it, sky, grass, laughter, all shimmering inside a fragile sphere. It's so light, you could blink and miss it. And yet, within that soft curve of soapy light, something much larger hides. Infinity doesn't always thunder. Sometimes, it floats. Have you ever stared into a bubble and seen your own reflection dancing among distorted shapes? For a moment, you're not looking at the world. You're inside it, wrapped in its roundness, gently held by its curve. There's something poetic about that. We expect infinity to be vast and loud and immeasurable. But what if it's not? What if the universe's enormity doesn't show itself in the stars above, but in the blink of a second, in the glisten of a surface that may pop before you understand it? Hey, one voice says softly, somewhere beneath the shade of a quiet afternoon. Look at that, the other replies, pointing upward. It's just a bubble. Yeah, but it has the whole sky in it. They fall silent. The breeze carries the bubble higher, and with it, a thought neither of them says aloud. Maybe the things we call small are the ones that carry everything. There's something beautifully contradictory in that. We spend our lives chasing bigness, bigger dreams, louder applause, grander answers. But what if the entire universe fits in the silence between two words? What if your mind, too, is a bubble, not empty, but full of reflections? Every thought, every emotion, every memory swirling around inside. And just like that soap bubble, it too can drift, it too can burst, and yet it holds so much before it fades. Some infinities are not in galaxies, but in seconds. Not in eternity, but in immediacy. A glance from someone who sees you. A breath taken after a long cry. A laugh that escapes at midnight when the world has already fallen asleep. In those moments, we hold the infinite, not because they last forever, but because we feel everything all at once. What if that's the secret? That infinity doesn't overwhelm, it whispers. It appears in quiet, fleeting things, like a soft breeze on your skin, or the weightless float of a dream, or a single idea that stays with you long after the words are gone. The bubble drifts further now. Its colors shimmer in and out of visibility. No one tries to catch it. They just watch, and in that watching, they are present, still, carried. Let it drift now, just a little longer. Don't chase it. Don't define it. Just float with it. Because maybe the infinite isn't somewhere else. Maybe it's already here, resting softly in the palm of this moment. The fog that remembers its shape. There are moments when you feel adrift, not because you've strayed too far, but because you've come too close. Close to something too big, too real, too honest. It's strange, isn't it? That the nearer you are to the heart of something true, the more it can dissolve your sense of direction. You're not lost in the sense of being gone. You're lost in the sense of being overwhelmed. The mind hasn't caught up yet, like fog hovering low over the sea, remembering that it was once the rain that fell, the cloud that roamed, the ocean that rose. Why do I feel so unclear lately? I don't know. Maybe it's not confusion. Maybe it's the first sign of something awakening. Sometimes clarity doesn't come with a flash of lightning. It arrives softly, in the way mist clears when you stop trying to chase it away. And maybe confusion isn't your enemy. Maybe it's the space right before revelation, the pause before the knowing, the place where transformation gathers its breath. To be confused is to be in motion, to be suspended between what you knew and what's beginning to know you back. There's a kind of sacredness to that fog. It slows everything down, and you start noticing the world in softer focus. The trees become silhouettes. The road bends gently, like it's guarding a secret. And maybe the secret is this. You don't have to see everything clearly to be on the right path. You just have to keep walking. Slowly. With wonder. What if I never figure it all out? Maybe you're not supposed to. Maybe figuring it out isn't the point. Then what is? Feeling it. Trusting it. Letting the fog touch you instead of fearing it. You've been rain before. You've known flow. You've known the moment of falling, the rush, the softness, the return. And in this moment, even as fog, you hold that memory. It's stored somewhere deep, in your quiet breath, in the ache of not knowing, in the warmth of surrender. To remember your shape doesn't mean to recall every answer. It means to feel whole even when you're shapeless. To remember that you are still water, still part of something greater, still moving. So don't force your way out of the fog. Let it wrap around you like a blanket spun from your own becoming. Let the silence speak. Let the gray hold your hand for a while. It's not the absence of light. It's the softness before dawn. There's wisdom in walking without the need to see 10 steps ahead. Just walk, with no rush, with wonder. And soon, the fog will begin to remember you too. Number 39, the string that tied you here. Sometimes, without warning, you pause, right in the middle of an ordinary day, and feel a strange pull. It's not loud. It doesn't shout. But it's there. A quiet sensation humming beneath the skin, whispering that you are exactly where you're meant to be, though you're not quite sure why. Maybe you arrived here by choice. Maybe you made 1,000 tiny decisions, each stacking upon the next like stones across a river, until you found yourself standing in this exact moment. Or maybe it wasn't a choice at all. Maybe life swept you here like a current, swift and unseen, and you've just now noticed the shore beneath your feet. But what if it was neither? What if it was a promise? Not the kind spoken out loud, but the kind the soul makes in the space between lifetimes. A silent vow, forgotten in waking memory, yet remembered in the bones? What if something in you said long ago, "I'll go there, I'll show up, even if I forget why"? One person leans back in their chair and says quietly, "You ever feel like you were meant to be in a place, even though nothing makes sense?" The other looks out the window, thinking. "Yeah," they reply. Like there's a thread. You can't see it, but you know it's tied to something important, something you can't name yet. That's the mystery of the string. It might stretch backward into the laughter of your childhood, or forward into a future version of yourself who's waiting patiently for you to catch up. But more likely, it runs inward, through the quiet center of your being, not pointing to a destination, but to a remembrance, a gentle unraveling of all the noise, the expectations, the masks, until only you remain. If you close your eyes and follow that thread, you may not find answers, but you might find presence. You might find that each breath is a tug, a reminder that being here, right here, is not a mistake. It's a continuation of something sacred, of something still unfolding. So don't tug too hard. Let it stay taut, humming with wonder. Let it sway with the rhythm of your days. Let it guide you, not like a leash, but like a lullaby. A song only your heart remembers. Hold on to it, gently. It knows the way forward. And the next truth, it's already waiting, just one breath beyond. The question that falls asleep with you. When the world goes silent and the room dims into the soft blur of night, something gentle happens in the mind. Thoughts don't stop. They change shape. They loosen their grip. The question you couldn't answer during the day doesn't vanish. It simply tucks itself beneath your pillow, like a child who knows it's not yet time to be understood. Sleep isn't a pause in curiosity. It's its quiet continuation. As you lie down, eyes heavy and heart soft, the mind begins to whisper instead of speak. It drifts. It dances. It asks in hushed tones instead of loud declarations. And the questions it asks are not the ones that seek facts or figures. No. These are the questions shaped like fog, like wind, like lullabies hummed just low enough not to disturb. Questions like, what am I becoming when no one is watching? Or, who dreams me while I dream? Maybe the best questions were never meant to be answered by daylight logic. Maybe they were meant to cradle us, to wrap around our thoughts like a warm blanket and remind us that not everything needs resolution. Some things only need wonder, and some thoughts are only safe enough to rise when the world sleeps. Have you ever noticed how your mind returns to strange places when you're half asleep? Not because they're unfinished, but because they're sacred. Those spaces between waking and dreaming hold the questions you don't dare ask out loud, the ones that might shift your entire sense of self if answered too clearly. So instead, they wait. They sway gently. They sing to you with no lyrics. Do you think the stars wonder about us too? Someone once whispered beside me in the dark. I didn't answer, not because I didn't know, but because I wanted the question to live. Sometimes we need something that simply exists with us. No pressure, no solution, just company, like the sound of breathing beside you in the night, like the ocean's hush against the shore, like a question that curls up next to you and falls asleep, asking nothing of you but to be held. And so you let it rest. You don't rush to resolve it. You let it float, weightless and wordless, because maybe the role of some questions isn't to wake you up, it's to help you fall asleep, not to disturb you with answers, but to soothe you with wonder. So tonight, let that question rest. Don't chase it. Don't explain it. Let it dissolve into the rhythm of your breath. The night will hold it for you. And by morning, maybe you won't remember the question at all, but you'll wake up softer. And somehow, that will be enough. The hole that holds everything. There's something quietly terrifying and beautiful about a black hole, a place where light bends into silence, where time stretches out and forgets how to return. At first glance, it seems like the end of things, a cosmic mouth that devours meaning, matter, memory. But what if that's not the full story? Science tells us black holes aren't just empty. They're dense beyond comprehension. Everything they take in isn't lost, just altered, crushed, folded, reimagined into something else entirely. A doorway, maybe, not a tomb. And that's where it begins to mirror you, because emptiness doesn't always mean absence. Think of your own inner voids, those long pauses in conversation, those nights you cried without knowing why, the days when silence screamed louder than sound. Were those really nothing? Or were they, in their own strange way, incubators? Places where old versions of you unraveled to make room for something newer, softer, wiser. I feel hollow, one voice might say in the darkness of a sleepless night, like there's a hole inside me no one sees. And another might whisper back, maybe that hole isn't empty. Maybe it's sacred. Maybe it's holding the weight of all the things you're about to become. We are taught to fear the void, to avoid sadness, to numb stillness, to fix silence as if it were a problem. But perhaps the hole within you is not the enemy. Perhaps it is your most powerful teacher. In space, black holes pull everything toward them with an invisible gravity. But what pulls your soul inward? What longing curls your mind into itself, asking questions you can't yet answer? Maybe what feels like depression is actually compression, not destruction, but preparation, a collapse before rebirth. There is no straight line between loss and growth. Sometimes transformation looks like disappearance. Sometimes it sounds like silence, and sometimes it feels like being pulled into something you don't understand. Yet, if you've ever felt like you're disappearing, like you're falling into yourself, know this: even stars collapse. Not to vanish, but to become something more powerful. A neutron star, a singularity, a source of gravity so intense it alters the fabric of reality itself. So don't rush to fill the empty spaces in you. Don't patch every crack or silence every ache. Some hollows aren't flaws. They're invitations to descend, to dissolve, to discover. Let's drift closer now, not to be swallowed by the darkness, but to be reshaped by it. Because maybe, just maybe, the hole you fear is the very place where your next self is waiting to be born. The moon that watches you back. There's a kind of silence only the moon understands. It doesn't blink. It doesn't speak. It just is, hanging in the sky like a breath held forever. And still, we look up. Night after night, century after century, we look, and something deep in us feels looked back at. That pale circle has no eyes, no face, no voice. Yet it carries a presence so profound it silences even the loudest thoughts. Not because it speaks, but because it listens without interruption. Imagine stepping outside in the middle of the night. No traffic, no phone in your hand, just the hush of the world in sleep. You look up, and there it is. The moon, not demanding, not judging, just there. Its glow doesn't force itself upon you. It waits, softly, lovingly, like an old friend who doesn't ask questions but somehow understands every ache in your chest. And maybe, in that stillness, you remember something the noise of the day had made you forget. You are not invisible. We often chase recognition in human eyes, yearning to be seen, heard, validated. But what if the deepest kind of being seen doesn't come from eyes at all? What if there is a form of witnessing that has nothing to do with attention and everything to do with presence? That's what the moon offers. Not a spotlight, but a sanctuary. A kind of watching that doesn't ask you to perform, doesn't require you to explain. You don't need to be beautiful or successful or articulate under its gaze. You only need to be. There's a strange comfort in that. Like the moon doesn't care about the masks we wear, the roles we play, or the mistakes we've made. It simply reflects. Not just light, but truth. It mirrors the fact that you exist, that you matter, even in the stillest of moments. And perhaps that's enough. A young child once asked his mother, "Why does the moon follow me?" She smiled, not knowing the answer, but loving the question. And maybe the question is enough. Maybe the moon does follow you, not with purpose, but with presence. Like the sky itself can't bear to lose sight of you. Like existence has marked you with a quiet affection that never sleeps. What if the universe is like that too? Not cold and indifferent, but vast and attentive in its own way. Not with eyes, but with a kind of awareness that doesn't miss a single breath you take. What if being is enough to be felt by everything? Let that thought rest on you now. Let it loosen your chest. You don't need to earn the moon's attention. You never did. Just stand there for a moment with your feet on the earth and your face in the moonlight. Breathe. No one's asking you to shine, only to be. Because somewhere in that night sky, something watches, something cares. Not with judgment, not with expectation, but with the quiet, eternal knowing of a moon that has seen it all and still stays. The chain that frees you. At first glance, the word chain stirs resistance. It whispers of confinement, of prisons and boundaries that press against your will. You might imagine metal links clamped around the ankles of ambition, dragging behind you like the weight of everything you've ever been told you can't do. But what if that same chain, silent, glinting in the dim light of reflection, wasn't your captor at all? What if it was your rhythm? You see, in art, the edge of the canvas isn't the enemy. It's the frame that lets the painting exist. A dancer doesn't lament the stage's size. She uses its borders to shape her movements. A haiku, in its strict syllabic structure, doesn't lose power from its limitations. It gains it. The poem breathes because of the constraint. The meaning is carved into the boundary, not in spite of it. So too with life. Your time here is not endless. That might seem tragic at first, but imagine this. If you had all the time in the world, would you ever truly cherish a morning sunrise? Would you bother to whisper, "I love you" tonight, if you thought you'd have forever? The edge, the chain, creates urgency, and in urgency, we find meaning. Isn't freedom about breaking chains? Someone asks. Perhaps not. Perhaps true freedom is deeper than escape. Escape is easy. You can flee a job, a relationship, a hometown. But what happens next? You often find yourself in a new version of the same pattern, because the real chain is within. Here's the paradox. The moment you stop resisting the chain and start listening to its rhythm is the moment you begin to move with it. Not like a prisoner, but like a partner in some cosmic choreography. You stop trying to rip the links apart and start weaving them into music. that chain becomes a circle, a space, a home, a sacred limit that offers shape to your choices. Then what am I really? The voice inside asks. A product of my limits? Not quite. You are not the limit. You are the movement inside it. Like water in a cup, you take form within the boundaries. Like a violin string, you need tension to make sound. Without the constraint, there would be no song, no shape, no self. There are people who spend their entire lives hating the walls around them. They shout, push, run in circles. But then there are others, quieter ones, who pause, lean in, and touch the stone, and they realize something strange. The wall is not just a barrier. It's a mirror. It reflects what you are capable of becoming within its presence. A man who accepts his past, his trauma, his regrets, his flaws, not as excuses, but as ingredients, begins to forge a new strength, not despite the pain, but because of it. That is the dance. That is the chain that frees. Think of a tree growing between stones. The roots twist around the rocks, not through them. They adapt. They find space in the pressure. They do not rebel against the earth. They claim it. So maybe your greatest freedom will not come from casting off your chains, but from realizing that you grew muscles beneath them, that the tension taught you grace, that the struggle carved a depth in you that softness never could. Now breathe. Can you feel it? The chain still exists. Life still has its edges, but it's looser now, not because it disappeared, but because you expanded. You stretched inside the space you once thought too small. You found rhythm where there was once only resistance. You danced. And in that dance, something ancient stirred awake. So let it move with you now, not as a shackle, but as a pulse. The echo of your limits becoming your liberation. And when the next chain appears, don't ask how to break it. Ask instead, how can I grow within this? That is where your freedom lives. Not beyond the chain, but through it. The traveler, with no destination. What if your journey was never meant to arrive anywhere? What if the questions about where are you going were always a little misguided? Not because the future doesn't matter, but because who you're becoming matters more. Somewhere deep inside, maybe you've already felt it, this quiet shift from chasing places to discovering presence. There is something strange about the way we measure our lives by destinations, degrees, careers, marriages, cities, as if we are trains moving from station to station, and success is simply arriving at the right stop on time. But what if your soul is not a train, but a breeze, not moving toward a place, but becoming the wind itself? Most of us have spent so long trying to be on track that we forgot how to walk freely. We schedule every hour. We plot every goal. And when someone asks us what we want from life, we give answers with bullet points, as if our heart were a resume. But you're not a task. You're not a plan. You're not even a project. You're a becoming. Somewhere along the way, you might have forgotten how sacred it is to not know where you're going. That feeling of mystery, once called childhood wonder, is still here, just beneath the pressure. Maybe the version of you that wants to reach there is quietly exhausting itself, while the real you is whispering, let's just be here. There's a beautiful paradox in walking without a destination. It doesn't mean you're lost. It means you're free. A traveler without a fixed point isn't failing. They're listening to the shift in wind, to the rhythm of breath, to the quiet invitations of the soul. I don't know where I'm going, you might say. But what if that's not a confession? What if it's a celebration? In a world obsessed with control, you've chosen curiosity. In a culture chasing certainty, you've opened your hands to wonder. There's a kind of strength that doesn't show up in achievements or check marks. It shows up in presence, in sitting quietly with yourself without needing to solve or fix or force, just to feel what is real, just to notice who you're becoming. Not because you made a 5-year plan, but because you took one breath, then another. The self that is unfolding through you now isn't the product of goals. It's the result of presence. It's what happens when you walk without rushing, when you trust without demanding answers, when you wander not to escape, but to listen. Maybe tonight isn't about changing direction. Maybe it's about dropping the map, not because you've given up, but because you've finally started to trust the compass that lives inside your chest, the one that doesn't speak in coordinates, but in quiet pulls, the one that doesn't point forward or backward, but inward. And perhaps that's what the journey always wanted to be, not a line towards something else, but a spiral gently returning you to yourself. Each step not progress, but presence. Each moment not a means to an end, but the end itself. So take this moment now, this pause, and feel the freedom inside it. You're not late, you're not early, you're not behind, you're becoming, slowly, gently, like a tide turning in silence. Let's take one more step, softly now. No urgency, no need to name where it's going. Just trust that wherever it leads, you will not just arrive, you will unfold, not as a traveler reaching a place, but as a soul returning to its breath. The shadow that tells the truth. There's a silence that only speaks when the world goes quiet. It doesn't shout, it doesn't beg, but it waits for you. Not the version of you that smiles politely in public or says the right things in daylight. It waits for the one you bury, the one you ignore, the one you fear, your shadow. We've all been taught to walk toward the light, to chase positivity, to escape pain. And yet, how many of us have found ourselves sleepless at midnight, haunted not by monsters under the bed, but by truths we tried to ignore? Carl Jung knew. He wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." That sentence doesn't flatter your ego, it cuts through it. Because the darkness you avoid may be the very source of your wholeness. There's something strange about sleep. It removes your mask. Your mind, unfiltered, drifts into dreams, and dreams are not always pretty. Some are confusing, others terrifying. But have you ever considered that maybe they're not random? Maybe your dreams are your shadow's voice, raw, poetic, misunderstood. When the conscious mind shuts off, the subconscious whispers what you couldn't say in daylight. And maybe, just maybe, that whisper is the truth. A woman once told me she dreamt of drowning every night. She thought it was fear, anxiety, weakness. But when we talked more, she realized she'd been silencing her sadness for years. She wore strength like armor, smiled through funerals, succeeded through heartbreak. And that dream? It wasn't punishment, it was honesty. Her sadness was asking to be held, not hidden. The shadow isn't evil. It's just everything you've abandoned. It's the rage you were told to suppress, the longing you felt ashamed to feel, the voice that cried out when you were told to stay quiet, the part of you that knows how to scream, to break, to yearn, and still love. The shadow isn't your enemy. It's the part of you that endured, even when you pretended it didn't exist. But shadows don't vanish when ignored. They grow. They distort. Until one day, they show up in your relationships, your addictions, your anxieties, and you wonder, where did this come from? The answer is simple. It came from you, the part you couldn't face. Yet here's the miracle. When you turn towards your shadow, It stops being a monster. It becomes a mirror, a teacher, a guide. It doesn't scream anymore. It sings softly in the language of dreams, in the hush of sleepless nights, not to torment you, but to remind you. You are not only light, you are depth, and depth is beautiful. So tonight, if the dark feels heavy, don't run. Listen. Sit with your discomfort. Let it speak. Ask it what it needs. And don't be surprised if the answer isn't dramatic. Sometimes your shadow just wants to be seen. Like a child hiding under the bed, it wants to be told, "You're still part of me. I'm not ashamed of you." Because real healing isn't about becoming more perfect. It's about becoming more whole. So when the lights go out and the dreams begin and the shadows rise, welcome them. They are your forgotten truths, learning how to breathe again. They're not there to scare you. They're there to free you. The thread that binds all things. Somewhere deep within you, beneath the noise of your daily thoughts, under the shuffle of routine and the murmur of doubts, there's a quiet question. A question you've probably asked in different forms without even noticing. Who am I? Why am I here? Is there something more? It's not a new question. It's not yours alone. Long before you were born, someone stood beneath a different sky, barefoot on a different soil, and whispered those same words into the wind. A philosopher in Greece, a child in a cave, a monk in the mountains, a woman staring at stars long before telescopes existed. They asked, without knowing the answer would echo forward in time and land softly in you. Maybe thought isn't as private as we think. Maybe it moves like thread, passed from mind to mind, across centuries, cultures, and languages. You feel it when you read old poetry, and somehow it understands your loneliness. You feel it in sacred texts, in lullabies, in the look a stranger gives you on the street that says, "I know." Every question is a tug on that thread. And every time you ask, you're not just seeking, you're participating. There's a strange comfort in that. You're not lost. You're woven. Part of a vast tapestry that includes every confused philosopher, every dreaming mystic, every quiet soul who ever paused to wonder. The thread doesn't belong to you, but you hold it now. And by holding it, you continue the weaving. What if your wondering, right now, isn't aimless at all? What if it's your turn to keep the questions alive, not so they get answered, but so they keep connecting us all? There's beauty in asking without needing a reply, in tracing mystery with your fingertips instead of trying to own it, like running your hand along the surface of a river, not to stop it, but to feel its movement. Close your eyes. Picture that thread stretching backward through generations of thinkers, dreamers, believers, each of them tugging gently at the same invisible string. And now, here you are. Another hand, another tug, another ripple in the eternal web. Maybe your role isn't to solve the question, but to keep it alive. Someone once said that all of philosophy is a footnote to a few ancient questions. Maybe your life is too. A soft paragraph written in the margins of eternity. And that's not small. That's sacred. So take a breath. The thread is in your hands now, not to unravel it, but to feel how many souls it connects. Let it guide you, not forward, not back, but inward, beyond memory, beyond language, beyond even answers, only into wonder. The ice that remembers water. There's a kind of silence in frozen things, still, shimmering, unmoving. But that stillness is not emptiness, it's memory. Because ice, despite its solid frame, is only water wearing the mask of structure. Beneath the cold rigidity is a softness, a flow, a former self that never left. Ice is not a betrayal of water. It's just a slower version. A moment paused, a shape held in suspension, and maybe that's you too. How many times have you felt frozen, not in body, but in being, as if life demanded stillness from you, and so you complied? You put on the face that doesn't flinch, said the words that felt safe, stood still when all you wanted was to move. But deep within, wasn't something still rippling, something untouched by the cold, waiting patiently to return to flow? You weren't born to stay solid. You were born to respond, to heat, to change, to love, to time, just like water. You were born to adapt, to fall into new shapes, to reflect the light, to become mist, stream, ocean, all depending on the moment. But somewhere along the way, maybe you were told to be ice, to hold yourself together, to preserve, to resist, to control. Yet the irony is, even ice cannot hold its form forever. No matter how tight it clings to the cold, no matter how firm it looks from the outside, eventually warmth arrives. And with it, release. Not destruction, not death, but return. Have you felt that warmth lately? That subtle tug at the edges of your soul? That small part of you that no longer wants to stay contained? It's not weakness, it's memory. The memory of what you were before you froze. Someone once asked in a quiet room, "Why do I feel like I'm melting lately? Like I'm coming undone?" And the other answered softly, "Because you're not supposed to stay hard forever. You're meant to move again." There's nothing wrong with stillness. Sometimes we need it. Sometimes life calls us to pause, to solidify just enough to hold what would otherwise slip away. But stillness is not the end. Stillness is simply the breath before motion, ice before flow. So if you feel yourself softening, emotionally, spiritually, even physically, know this: you are not breaking. You are remembering. You are returning. The parts of you that once froze in defense, in fear, in survival, they are being invited back to movement, back to presence, back to your natural state. And maybe tonight, you don't need to push yourself. Maybe you don't need to change everything all at once. Maybe it's enough to just feel the edges of your soul begin to thaw, to sit in the quiet warmth and let the memory of water rise, to trust that who you are underneath the layers, the structure, the coping, the silence, is still alive, still fluid, still whole. You are not the shell. You are the current beneath it. You are not what held you together. You are what longed to flow. Let the stillness cradle you. Let the cold soften, not in panic, but in peace. Let the warmth of your own breath melt the story you no longer need to carry, because the water is waiting, and it's always known how to move. The cloud that rains ideas. There's a silence before creation that few notice, a kind of stillness, not empty, but expectant. You're sitting there, maybe sipping something warm, maybe staring at a blank page or walking through your day like it's just another Tuesday. And yet something is gathering, just out of reach. Not loud, not bright, but slowly thickening, like a cloud forming in the corner of your sky. Thoughts don't always arrive with fanfare. They don't knock on your door wearing name tags or screaming importance. No, most of them creep in like distant thunder, unseen, unheard, until they can't be ignored, until the sky inside you shifts. Have you ever felt that sense that something's on the verge of spilling out of you? A phrase, an image, an idea, a need to build or say or change something, but you don't quite know what. That's the gathering storm. That's inspiration becoming weather. There's an odd kind of beauty in not knowing what's coming next, only that it's coming. Like watching the clouds thicken and darken above a field, You don't run. You don't hide. You just stand there, head tilted back, arms at your sides, waiting for the first drop. You don't make it rain. You welcome it. Maybe your best ideas aren't things you invent, but things you receive. Not from outside exactly, but from a part of you that speaks in mist, not words. That communicates in pressure, not logic. That asks only for your stillness, your presence, your openness. A conversation once happened between two close friends, one a painter, the other a teacher. The teacher said, "How do you know when to begin? How do you catch the idea?" The painter smiled and said, "I don't. I just stand still long enough for the cloud to notice me." We often think ideas must be wrestled from the void, conquered like wild beasts, pinned down with discipline and will. But maybe they're more like wild animals in another sense, shy, easily scared. They come when you're quiet, when you're soft, when you're listening, not shouting. Try this. Stop chasing. Just listen. Look out your window. Watch how a single leaf twitches in the breeze, how light folds differently across the table when the sun moves an inch. Your attention is the lightning rod. The cloud only needs you to be there. Maybe the reason the idea hasn't arrived isn't because you're not working hard enough, but because you haven't stepped out into the rain. Maybe you've been holding an umbrella of distraction, of fear, of perfectionism. You've been dry for too long. Let go of that. Let the rain fall. Let it touch your skin, run down your arms, soak through the pages of what you thought your day would be. Let your mind feel messy, saturated, electric. That's how ideas bloom, not from control, but from surrender. Not from silence, but from a certain kind of soft noise. A drizzle of what-ifs, a downpour of maybes. The storm of insight hovering above you isn't dangerous. It's generous. It has waited patiently while you busied yourself with structure and expectation. It's been circling you like a quiet satellite, just waiting for the signal that you're ready to receive, that you're not afraid to be washed clean of plans. So ask yourself, not with pressure, but with genuine curiosity, what idea has been circling above me, just waiting for me to stop running and look up? Maybe tonight is the night to stop seeking shelter. Maybe tonight is the night to get wet, to stand in the flood of your own creative weather and say yes to the storm. No umbrella, just presence. The rain is here. Let it fall. The silence that speaks the loudest. Silence. It's more than the absence of sound. It's not just what remains when the chatter fades, or when the music ends, or when a conversation runs out of steam. Silence is its own voice, ancient, wise, and undemanding. It doesn't shout for your attention. It waits. It lingers. It fills a room not with echo, but with presence. Have you ever been in a moment so still, so complete, that it said more than any explanation could? A moment when nothing needed to be added, because somehow everything had already been said, and the truth was simply there. That's not emptiness. That's a different kind of fullness, the kind only silence can bring. There's a reason the most sacred moments in life often come wrapped in quiet. The hush after a long-awaited yes. The breath before a child's first cry. The stillness of holding someone you thought you lost. Or even the space between two people who no longer need to explain themselves. Words can illuminate. But silence? Silence reveals. Sometimes we think the world only values noise, opinions, updates, statements, declarations. And yet, beneath it all, don't you feel it? The pause between heartbeats, the space between stars, the moments in a conversation where both people just stop and listen, not to respond, but to feel. That's where real meaning lives. Think about the most powerful lines you've ever heard. Weren't they wrapped in stillness? A whisper at the right time, a glance with no words, a silence that stretched longer than expected, making you wonder, ache, reflect. That pause before truth arrives, not as a thunderclap, but like a slow dawn. And maybe that's what ideas are too. Not loud inventions, not lightning bolts, but clouds gathering quietly behind your thoughts, forming wordlessly until they're ready to pour. Maybe the muse doesn't scream. Maybe it only visits when everything else goes quiet. There's a beauty in letting silence lead. It teaches you to hear what's beneath the noise, not just in the world, but in yourself. Have you noticed how sometimes your best thoughts arrive not when you're thinking hard, but when you stop trying altogether? In the shower, on a walk, lying in the dark before sleep. Those aren't coincidences. That's silence doing its best work. A couple once sat by a fireplace, side by side for hours. Not a single word passed between them. And yet, when someone asked what they had talked about, one of them simply smiled and said, "Everything." Because silence had already spoken for them. A child once asked her father, "Why don't the stars talk?" The father looked up, held her small hand and said, "Because they're listening." Maybe that's what the universe is doing when it's quiet. Listening. Holding space for you to feel what words can't explain. Not judging, not rushing, just waiting, patiently. So maybe your deepest ideas, your wildest dreams, your truest self, they're not in the noise you make to be heard. Maybe they live in the space you create to listen, not just to others, but to the pause between your thoughts, to that subtle knowing that doesn't need to be translated into words. Can you sit with that for a moment? Not to escape the world, but to re-enter it more fully. Because when you emerge from silence, what you say carries more weight. Not because it's louder, but because it's been steeped in stillness. Let yourself fall into that pause now. No pressure to produce, perform, or explain. Just presence. Just the quiet hum of being. The next moment isn't rushing toward you. It's waiting patiently, like a gentle breath. No need to chase it. Just arrive. Let the silence speak. It already knows what you need to hear. The end that never ends. Endings, in their quiet certainty, have always tricked us. They wear the illusion of finality like a carefully folded curtain, dropping just as the stage grows still. But is the story ever really over? What if the end is just the soft bend in a river that continues out of sight? What if it's not a full stop, but an ellipsis, drifting? Sleep, too, pretends to be a conclusion. The world dims, our muscles surrender, and we close our eyes as if closing the last chapter of a long day. But deep inside the hush, something stirs. Thoughts don't stop. They reshape. Dreams don't obey time. They flow sideways, backwards, through cracks we never noticed in waking life. The mind doesn't power down. It travels, quietly, widely, without a map. It's not an ending. It's a passage. Another world, just slightly ajar. So here we are, at the end of something. But what, exactly? Words have come and gone. Thoughts have risen and softened like morning fog. You've wandered through paradoxes, stars, silence, shadows. 50 fragments, 50 steps. Or maybe it was all one breath, expanding slowly into form. Maybe this wasn't a staircase upward or downward, but inward, into yourself, into that place no noise can follow, into the still space between thoughts, where awareness lives without explanation. And now, as we pause at this final threshold, we realize the end doesn't arrive with fanfare. It doesn't shout its presence or slam the door. It only invites you to notice. how much of you has shifted, how much lighter you've become, as if each idea shed a layer you no longer needed. Two voices might meet here in this silence. Is it over? No, it's just quieter now. But I feel different. You are. You've softened into yourself. So, where do I go next? Nowhere. You're already there. And if I fall? Then fall inward. The ground inside you is deeper than you think. The most beautiful endings dissolve into beginnings we don't name. Just as the sea doesn't know where the sky begins or how the breeze becomes breath, this, right now, isn't a conclusion. It's a gentle permission to let go, not to shut down, but to open more softly, to fall, not into sleep, but into your own quiet. There is no need to turn the page. The story already continues behind your closed eyes. It doesn't need to be written. It only needs to be felt. Because sometimes the most honest truth isn't in the telling. It's in the surrender. So let go now. Let everything that carried you here drift gently behind you. Don't chase it. Don't grip it. Just fall, like a feather freed from the hand that held it too long. Not into darkness, but into depth. Not into absence, but into presence. The journey is not done. It never was. It never will be. It only changes tone and whispers. Still here, still unfolding, endlessly. And now here we are, floating somewhere beyond level 100. There was no final answer, only questions that grew quieter, as your awareness did too. Maybe that's the secret, that not all truths shout. Some truths whisper from the edges of thought, asking not to be solved, but to be sat with. Tonight, reality didn't collapse. It just released its grip. So rest now, traveler of thought. Let the unanswered hold you, like a cradle of stars. And if sleep takes you before the next dilemma begins, perhaps that is the answer you were searching for all along.